And 3 makes a quorum, so we're going to get started if we could. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to get started for our budget workshop for June 14th, 2023 at 6:01 p.m. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky, Commissioner Hudak,
Here.
Commissioner Preston,
Here.
Vice Mayor Parnes, Mayor Gantz.
Here, Commissioner Parnes is out for his absence due to illness, and Commissioner Drosky is on his way. Yes, Vice Mayor Parnes. If you could all please stand for a moment of silence for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could have approval of the agenda for June 14th, 2023.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Preston, seconded by Commissioner Hudak. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, Madam Clerk.
For those attending via Zoom online, wishing to speak under public input, please click raise hand at the bottom of the participants tab and your audio will be unmuted when you are recognized by the mayor. For those attending via Zoom by telephone, please press *9 to raise your hand and your audio will be unmuted when you are recognized by mayor. Please make sure your audio is unmuted on your end by pressing *6. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get started, I'd just like to add something. I had a conversation with the city manager today, and I shared with him my thoughts of the format of these budget workshops, as we're calling them. And staff did an excellent job. I want to praise all of you for the good job that you did and for David's leadership on that. But for me, I feel that these aren't so much a workshop. It's more what I call in my line of work, it is it's a business review. We're getting a very high level overview of department requests, our successes, some of the things we did the past year, some of the things we're planning on doing in the upcoming year, and future considerations. But we're not really getting to the meat and potatoes of everything that what we're doing here. And it's certainly not a situation in which we can workshop it and talk about what's our return on investment on some of the things that we're doing. What are some of the things to consider? What are some of the ideas that we have that we want to see change? Because we're seeing this information pretty much in real time. So this particular setup, in my opinion, leads us towards what should be a potential another set of meetings to kind of get more in depth into this. Now, some of that can be done probably when we actually have our readings and we go through it during our commission meetings. But this format, and in talking with David, I think the format, calling it a workshop is probably not doing it justice or it is accurate. It certainly is beneficial, but I think it would have a lot more involvement from the commission in giving our thoughts on this in a slightly different format.
And I thank you for that discussion today and the feedback. So we'll just call what it is. We are trying to present really what the successes of the city have been using the budget in the previous years, the programs that we have brought forward, what those dollars are being used for now and the status of that. And then, of course, in future considerations, how we plan to use the dollars for various programs and projects and various expenditures that we propose to bring forward. And then additionally, as we have the department level budget request, which is what you're seeing here, really what the departments are looking to achieve within the next fiscal year. So I really do appreciate that feedback. And I think that that's, things that we can work on in the future with discussions from the commission, if that's, really what they kind of like to see on how we can maybe consolidate it's a balance, you know, for us to make sure that we can at least show you what we're using those dollars for, but understanding that perspective of trying to look at things from a, hey, this is what we're planning to do. And I say this just to ensure that we as a organization, as a leadership team, understand the directive, you know, that, you know, we will present things a little bit differently in the sense that we'll discuss the projects, anything new, anything that we're looking to bring to the table, what effects that may have on the organization, to the public, what efficiencies it's going to gain, to allow the commission to weigh in on whether or not they agree or disagree with that direction. Excellent. So
Thank you.
thank you. So tonight it's not as many departments, but it's the big four. So we have the Office of Public Safety, we have Parks and Recreation, we have Sustainable Management and Environmental Services. So these departments, they have very large operations, multiple divisions, and so they'll be presented in the same way we did last night, but they'll be broken down by division so you can see how each one of them operates and what the expenditure requests are within each of one of them. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Mr. Brimlow in the Office of Public Safety.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, residents of Deerfield Beach, and staff. I'm going to go through my slides, and I'm just going to highlight. I'll try and indicate the particular functional area and highlight them, because otherwise it will take quite a long time to go through them. I have 9 functional divisions, so I don't want to spend time on each of them on every one of these items, but I will highlight what I think has been some serious accomplishments as we go through them as well. On the first slide, just as an example with emergency management, as you know, we were kind of in a dearth of emergency management for a while. I'm proud to say that this year we've done an incredible amount of staff training. We had 8 formal staff trainings for our city staff alone. We've done numerous trainings that involve other agencies. We've had agencies come as far as Texas and other places and come in, and we've done everything from forms training and public information. It's been a great impact for us and other communities, and I'm glad to say that Deerfield is being used as a hub for some of those trainings. That's something that we all should be proud of. Down in the code enforcement, I did want to highlight this too, because this has been an area of concern to me, is what it costs us to do code enforcement, but also what it costs us to get compliance with code enforcement. So some of the things that we have been striving to do and have been getting successful at is doing some of the cost recovery and the mitigation protocols. For example, we are using more in alignment with working minimums. You know, it costs us several $100s, sometimes thousands of dollars to work on a mitigation. And that's just somebody saying, hey, I don't want to pay the fine that you gave me. And we've been working very hard to keep the minimums on that so that we can recover some of our costs that we're sinking into that the residents are paying for. When we do mitigation protocols, those mitigations now are reviewed by me personally to represent the city interests. And I work with our city attorney's office and code compliance investigators to come up with a reasonable answer or solution. And sometimes there are reasons that we do need to mitigate substantially, but we are holding fast on that. In the area of ocean rescue, I wanted to highlight this, that you know, we've done a lot to accommodate a lot of the modern activities. I would say that our ocean rescue code is actually very modern in terms of what we recognize as the activities that are happening at the beach. And I think that's very good. It speaks volumes to, you'll see a slide later that deals with our attendance at our beach and how that's up almost 10%. And another thing is, and sometimes people don't see it as the great value that it is the nationally recognized rescue teams that we have. They compete nationally. I will tell you this, that when it comes to recruitment, that is a huge benefit. We get top-notch candidates that want to come here and work. And always Mike Brown, Chief Brown, is dealing with people calling up, hey, you got a spot for me, you got a spot for me. It really is, it's a testament to his team and what they do. And you'll also see later on one of the slides with Beach Rescue having to do with the number of rescues that they do as well. And those rescues are because of the great training of his staff. Fire rescue, again, I think I can announce it. I hope I can announce it. We did get ISO 1 rating again, which is fantastic for our residents, our businesses. We also, working with the office Pam, we did a model educational plan that the accreditors were very impressed by, and that was us utilizing our water bills to educate the public on fire rescue issues. They thought that was very unique. That was a coordinated effort between public safety, fire, and Pam. And we did that. There was a cost involved, a minimal cost, but it gave us tons of points on our accreditation as well. And in law enforcement, we've done a lot to get a tactical information officer here, which is a kind of a unique assignment in the Broward Sheriff's Office. We're one of only a few that had the opportunity to test that out. It did a lot to help us with solving some of our more violent crimes that are in our city, or people that come into our city to commit violent crimes. That worked with our Intel Center. Another one is that we have now used deputies to be liaisons with our code compliance, so that we have extra tools to bring to bear when we have some of those more challenging, difficult code violations that they know how to get around code sometimes. They know what the rules are. So we also approach that from a multi-pronged approach. And just to give you another example of that, we had another case this last year that fire rescue got us involved in, that dealt with code. It ended up being a huge spot where a lot of different trafficking type things were going on. It involved all of public safety, and it was a very successful case. The state attorney's office is very pleased with that outcome. On the current initiatives, on the next slide, Dan. Current initiatives, I mentioned the training hub for emergency management, that we are expanding that, and this year we're going to have even more trainings that involve outside agencies. Also, emergency management starting to work with ES to work on infrastructure assessments. The code enforcement, we are looking at a quicker compliance. I've been working at that for a year, and the code compliance office has been too, and we're just about there and getting about the fastest that's legally allowed for us to get cases processed through and to magistrate. We're working also in creating an educational component. We just created door hangers again. We want to start using those to educate our public on some of the lower level things, but that become persistent, but things that they might not even know are code violations. Down in the fire rescue, this is a kind of an interesting part, an enhanced risk assessment software that tells us, that allows our fire rescue folks here in Deerfield to know whether they have the personnel and equipment to deal with a particular situation. It's kind of a sophisticated software that we have that enables them to properly staff, to properly have equipment on board when they're responding to a particular incident. In law enforcement, we were the only ones that had a behavioral analyst, a behavioral response team here. This is critically important because, as you all know, we deal with a lot of mental health issues in the community, whether it's people dealing with homelessness, whether it's domestic violence. We've had a lot of very tragic scenes and situations here in Deerfield, but having a behavioral response team was very advantageous. That pilot program ended, and now we are coordinating with an agency. I'm not going to say the agency just yet. I'm not sure how far along we are in the negotiation, but we are coordinating with an agency to have a behavioral therapist on staff in Deerfield at no cost to our citizens. And they will be responding, as our pilot program did, on some of these situations where mental health is more important than police activity. On the future considerations, the biggie for us has to do with the master plan and the master plan analysis. It's going to come back with 30 and 40-year projections. Those projections will deal with staffing issues. Are we staffed properly today? Are we overstaffed? Are we understaffed? How does it look for the next few decades? And what does our infrastructure in the public safety arena look like? Is that adequate? Are there some things that need to be improved, or are there major changes that are necessary? That master plan, we should have that by end of calendar year. And that will give us a lot of good information in terms of what our personnel needs will be moving forward. And they'll be able to take into consideration a lot of the uniqueness to the city of Deerfield Beach. Obviously, not every city is cut the same, and we have our own special areas and our own special needs. Code enforcement, I do want to bring up an issue with code enforcement, and that has to do with the staffing. As we continue to develop, at least from my perspective, I see businesses and citizens wanting to come to Deerfield. Deerfield is a choice place. And we see it over and over. I mean, it's remarkable how many people are wanting to come to Deerfield. As we continue to develop, as we continue to bring in businesses and more residents to come in here, code enforcement and code compliance is a very big deal. People coming in are expecting that, and we certainly want to deliver the best quality we can. We do have, in my opinion, some staffing issues there, maybe there's been some turnover, and that has to do partly with our contract and some other things. But that is something that I do want us to look at some point to see how we can enhance the staffing. I did a comparison with several cities in our area, 16 cities to be exact, and we have some areas to improve there. On the park rangers, for future consideration, one of the things that I would like to do, the beach is our largest park. That's how I look at that, and park rangers are an integral part of what we do. I think park rangers fit a specific niche that can accommodate both our public service in that area and also to gain more compliance from visitors and also residents who may not know or choose to violate our ordinances and our rules. I think that'll be very important. We are also doing a revisit of the signs out there and some other campaigns, but having a physical presence there is critically important, and having a person that can represent the city and the city's interests there is also important. And I think the park rangers do fit that niche. They do it in every other park. They're used to dealing with people who are a little bit confrontational at times. Of course, as you know, they are on our police radio system, so they have immediate access to our police officers. And so there is a good fit for them to assist in that. My goal would be to have every day a park ranger assigned to that as their post, as their park for the day. In fire rescue, I wanted to highlight this. We have benefited a lot this last year from a grant position that was being filled with a public safety life educator. We were not the ones that had sole use of that grant position, but we did benefit from it. And that's a public safety life educator. They did a couple of CPR classes. They did some educational training over on Stanley Terrace regarding fire response. They did several things there frequently. They frequently hosted some educational programs at Century Village. They did some out at the West Target. They did some car seats trainings. This is a really critical position, I feel, and to have someone here permanently to do that, to give us the CPR training, AED training, the bike safety awareness, all of that on fire prevention, I think is something for a future consideration I would really like us to look into. The city will absolutely benefit from that, and our needs in that area continue to grow. You'll see on the page that actually gives the financials, you'll see more about what that position can do and some of the things that have been done. We all were shocked when the fire prevention or fire safety specialist went out to Stanley Terrace and found out that the children in there did not even know that they were supposed to pull the fire alarm station. Those kinds of educational programs we need to have in our city. Next one. This is the overall budget for the Office of Public Safety. It's kind of difficult to look at in some like that. A lot of the funds down toward the bottom, those are based on revenues that we actually get in. For example, Law Enforcement Trust Fund is really based on what forfeitures and seizures happen from criminal cases. Our Target Area Trust Fund is based on how much we collect in code revenues. Crime Prevention Fund is oftentimes from donations, same with PAL. So, you know, these are a little bit variable at the bottom. On the top, most of our general fund expenditures stayed certainly within bounds, and we'll go through those each one in detail. The next one is administration of the operating budget. This is Public Safety Administration. We did a lot to adjust on the operating expenditures. You don't see it here, but there's actually a whole lot of work on the actual expenditures, and it ended up coming out pretty flat. The rest in the personnel services is regarding some of the pay and class study. The nuisance abatement trust funds, those are just accurately reflecting some of the estimates that we have. The next one, the code compliance. Just as a reminder, this contract came into being in 2015. It's not supposed to be changed till 2025. That expectation is that we are flat on what we have been paying for them and what we are paying for them for a 10-year period. Again, that goes back to my concerns about the quality of service that we're having based on staffing. I think that can be enhanced. We've seen some improvements in many ways, even when we added, for example, through sustainable management, bulk pickup and those kinds of things. But I think that in the general code enforcement, we need to really look at the staffing mode that we have on that. The other part of that, the slight fluctuation, has to do with magistrate expenses. The next one, this is parking authority, the operating budget, or the stats rather. On the stats, you can see that our citations have pretty much leveled off now. They went from 2020, they increased. They now, the last 2 years have been about the same. However, our revenue has gone up from about 3.5 million to 3.8 million. And those are just the fines and fees. It doesn't count the $300,000 in permits that we have for beach parking permits. And I think that this is an area that we need to explore. And the reason for that is you'll see when we look at the ocean rescue stats, the number of visitors that keep increasing to come to our beach. I think that we need to relook at some of these parking structures that we have, certainly in terms of our costs and what we are charging for parking. We have some of the cheapest parking in that I've ever heard of. We have parking in some cases as low as 60 cents an hour. And I think our highest is $4 an hour. So we can look at that. The next one is the actual budget for the parking authority. This has to do with a switch from some outside employment to our personnel that are permanent, but also there's a reduction that has to do with credit card savings, fees on credit card savings. Both what the financial services has done, as well as our new contract service provider with Park Mobile, significantly offsets any fees that we would have for credit card services. So I'm very proud of the Park Mobile contract that we were able to negotiate. The next slide for park rangers and operating budget. As it turns out, last year was the first year that we were actually doing the park rangers. There's a lot of expenses that in the past Parks and Rec had covered. We realized that those expenses were not in the budget. We added those in to make it more accurate for the cost of the park rangers. And that's pretty much what it is. There is still the beach ambassador equipment listed in here as well under the operating expenditures. The next slide is ocean rescue activity. And this is what I'm talking about. If you look over the last 4 years, that first data on the left, that's the number of millions of visitors that our beach has seen in a year. And we are up to 4.1. We broke 4 million, maybe at 4.1 million this year. That's another 8% increase over last year. And that's a lot of people coming to our beach. It's a lot of people needing to park at our beach. It's a lot of people to have safely driving around our beach. And it's great for our businesses, but we also have to keep things in check to make sure that the quality that we give on our beach to our residents and our visitors maintains a high level. The medical calls is something that we do track, and people forget sometimes that our ocean rescue staff does handle medical calls that are out there on the beach. And this last one has always been called rescues, but I changed the name of it intentionally because what we really need to understand is what Ocean Rescue is doing out there. Those are the numbers of lives that were saved by our lifeguards because people were drowning, because people were going under out in the water. So it's not just a rescue like, oh, they went out on their paddleboard and checked on somebody. No, these are actually lives that are being saved every single year. And we don't hear about it a lot. It's their duty. That's what they do. They do it every day. And they're happy to do it out there because we have a great team. But I do wanted to point that out. Next is the Ocean Rescue operating budget, which really has pretty much been flat. There is an additional partial cost of an admin support specialist that's shared with Pam. And there is an increase in overtime of $15,000. Part of what you know is that we're adding a tower number 0 out there. And we also have some other issues that we always like to keep in mind in terms of when the holidays fall during a particular year. That's important. because we do have to staff on those days. You know, when you're out there on 4th of July, for example, we are completely staffed for the entire duration of everything that we do. Those kinds of things we do take into consideration when we look at the overtime budget. So it may fluctuate $5, $10, or $15,000 in a given year. So that is also included in the budget for Ocean Rescue for next year. The next slide talks about services for fire rescue services. Calls for service, it pretty much looks like we are out of the COVID timeframe and now at our 18,000 plus or minus calls for service a year for fire rescue. I'm glad to say that building inspections have continuously gone up this last year. I think we're almost 10%. We're definitely 9% up on the building inspections over last year. We keep improving in that area. And our demand is going up still with plan reviews, another 5 to 6% increase on the number of plan reviews were done. The fire hydrant inspections are still very good. We're pretty much nailing all of them. We have almost 2,300 fire hydrants, not fire extinguishers, fire hydrants in the city. So we're staying really close on those. The next one is the operating budget for fire services. The personnel services is the municipal retirement obligation, and the operating expenditures has to do with the BSO contract. On the BSO contract, so you know, we do an analysis 3 different ways. When I get the contracts, I look at them as their face value of what they submit to us with the letter of consideration that comes from the Broward Sheriff's Office. Each city that is contracted with the Broward Sheriff's Office receives one of those letters and says, for your services, this is the cost. I look at that, I analyze that, I meet with the respective chiefs, we go through those line by line. I also have another analysis done. I call it a cap analysis. I want to know by every single category, where did BSO fall with regard to the caps that are established in the contract? Not simply just don't send me a summary sheet and give me some categories. I want to know exactly line by line, did we meet the caps here? Just as an example, health insurance is capped at 9%. That's a rather large number, I know, but that is what the contracts specify that we entered into. So I do make sure that we did not exceed that they did stay within the limits that are on that. A lot of times people get mistaken when they say, well, there's a 5% cap. There is a 5% cap almost across the board, but there are categories that we do not have the caps on, or there's less control, for example, on the insurance. And sometimes those go over. So if you ever see something that looks like it's over 5% in gross, that's very possible, but it doesn't mean that we violated anything in the contract. I look at that very carefully. The third way that I look at the contracts is I look at them laterally. I look at other cities. I want to make sure that Deerfield Beach is not somehow supplementing the cost for some other city or paying for things that other cities aren't having to pay for. So I do all 3 of those. Those 3 types of analysis are done. Fire rescue met the criteria on all 3 of those. And notwithstanding all of that, even adding in the public safety educator, if we were to do something like that, we still would be right at 5.1. So, and at the bottom of the slide, it goes into more detail. The point of the detail there is to demonstrate that the public life safety educator does, yes, general education things like the CPR and AED and all that, but they also do specialized training for youth, including things like fire starter, other youth programs. They also do things that are specialized for our senior community, fall prevention, medication, all kinds of things like that. And that's why that is on there for you to look at. For the next one is law enforcement services, and some kind of, the graphs here are kind of an interesting demonstration of some of the things that have happened. If you notice that the citations and the column to the far right under tickets, that is a projected number. But what we have to keep in mind is that law enforcement does a summer blitz. They do a back to school blitz, and they usually have DUI operations during the summer. Also, during this last year, law enforcement has done countywide operations here in the city of Deerfield Beach, and those cases are captured as a county case number, not a Deerfield case number. So in counting those, there's no way to really add those into our charts. But what is remarkable, and you'll see, is that the 3 years prior of nearly doubling the numbers, actually tripling, almost tripling the number of citations, we have finally seen We saw it peak and plateau, and finally seeing that we are now looking at a substantial decrease in the number of crashes. Finally seeing that. What that means is we need to keep some of the countywide services in place. We need to keep doing some of this traffic enforcement in some new and inventive ways. I will tell you that in July, a new law goes into effect that we are able to use speed cameras in school zones during school zone times. And those are treated like parking tickets, essentially. It's not assigned to the driver, it's assigned to the car. You go through the speed zone, you get tagged by the camera, you get the ticket in the mail and you pay it, or you don't register your vehicle. That has been very successful in many areas. That is the only citation of that kind where the city actually receives funding back. We receive a partial funding back, and the partial funding back is actually intended to offset crossing guard costs. So that is kind of it's all school related. It's supposed to be tied into that. So that's a program that we are exploring. I'm already looking at different vendors that are out there for that. And we're exploring with the sheriff's office the different ways that we can implement it here in the city. I think it would be an excellent one because it works whether there's a cop there or not. It works whether it's raining or not. It works whether it's sunny or not. And it's a very effective tool. I visited 2 different cities that have it in place, and it's magical. It really is. It seems to be like people get it after a few months, after a couple citations, they get it. So that is another cost recovery thing that I have in mind for this next year as well. And then the final slide is law enforcement services operating budget. Personnel services, again, is the municipal obligations for the municipal retirement. The operating expenditures is the BSO contract. Here's one of those cases where it says 6.25%. They met their obligations on all of the categories, all the analysis, the contractual obligations. They met that. That is just the happenstance of the numbers is where we end up at the 6.25. And then the other funds that are on there, as I said, those are mostly driven by activities that we don't have control over. There's nothing about the law enforcement trust fund that we can use for ongoing expenses or anything like that. That's for unanticipated costs or expenses that we might incur. Then the last one is the school crossing guards. You might recall that we eventually moved this out to a contract service provider. That contract service provider took all of our employees on board at their pay rate and kept them at their pay rate that they were receiving from the city, so that there was no harm in that way. They, however, by state law now have to move up on the other folks that are working for them, the minimum wage, the increase from the $11 to $12. So although that might be a 9% increase, the overall increase is 11% because of the the beneficial costs and those things and such. All right, so that is it. Would I have any questions? The crossing guards, you want to answer?
So we had attrition in crossing guards. The Deerfield Beach employed crossing guards throughout the past 8 or 9 years. And as we had that attrition, we were using the contract services for crossing guards to fill in. And it got to the point where we only had a few of our Deerfield Beach employed crossing guards left. The management of it is quite complicated because you're talking about, and I don't know the exact number of how many actual crossings we have, but every time you have an absentee, every time you have somebody call out, you've got to have that. You also have to have that management in place to call somebody else and then call the contractor who was contractor was bringing in somebody to fill that spot. And so it got to the point where we were able to, again, work with the contractor that they could absorb those individuals, part-time employees, non-benefit employees, and they brought them in at the same pay rate as they were with the city of Deerfield Beach. So it made a lot of sense to do so.
Yeah, there's also a training component. The city would be responsible to train them every year. That was becoming an issue because of the 34 crossing guards, we had 8, and the rest we were contracting out anyway. And then, as the city manager indicated, Anytime someone called out sick 20 minutes before they needed to be out there to cross the kids, we would scramble. And oftentimes what that meant was a deputy would have to be pulled off the road to go and fill the spot if somebody could get there from the crossing guard company in time. So there was a lot of logistics that the city was taking the burden on for that, which are eliminated through the contract.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. On slide 5 or slide 6, the target area trust fund, a 73% decrease. Can you go over that and why we lost over $823,000?
I'm trying to find it. Oh, there we go. Mhm. So on the, yes, there it is. On the target area trust fund, what happened was the way the target area trust fund works is it's a 50% allocation from code fines. That trust fund had been accruing value over time. Last year, money was allocated out of it and then was used. For example, a rough number, $160,000 or $170,000 was used. It'll be used for enhancing safety and security at the Tigner Center for lighting and those kinds of things. So we had money that was there that ended up being spent, but the new fiscal year is based on what we anticipate using current estimates of what our code enforcement fines will be. So that's another one of those numbers. All of these trust fund numbers can fluctuate slightly. I mean, if we ended up with a lot of fines, then we'll probably have extra money in there
That's what I
next
was
year.
like, is code enforcement not,
No,
okay,
no. That was partial of a prior fund balance.
okay. And then also for this public safety education officer, are we looking to get a grant for that, or is that something that the city is gonna have to budget for?
That would be a city budget.
Okay, thank you.
Comments? Drosky? Yeah. Commissioner Drosky, for the record, is here. I said this at the beginning, Commissioner, and you missed it, but I'll just kind of share my thoughts one more time. That in looking at the format of this workshop, to me, it's not really a workshop. It's more of a business review in which we kind of get an overview of what's happening. We do get to see our first peek at the budget, we get an idea. Obviously, we're seeing this in real time. I think we got the presentation yesterday. So these presentations are pretty fresh for us. It doesn't give us the opportunity to kind of look at return on investment or debate any of the issues that we have or do a real true deep dive, but it does give us a really good overview of what's happening in each department. I'm hoping in the future we can kind of change this up a little bit, but also, you know, this is probably going to lead for more discussions up on the dais as we get further into the budget. But I do have a couple quick questions. I have concerns just at first blush at the public safety educator position, because it sounds like it's a single employee position. And many of these programs or things that were done were, I thought, were already being done by community outreach or different areas as part of the contract. It seems strange to dedicate this at an extraordinarily high cost. Well, it's not that extraordinary because that's about the cost of a single officer or fireman, I believe. But it seems like this is stuff we've already been doing. So why are we paying extra to do this?
So we had previously a partial use of the public education safety person because there was a grant that was countywide that we were sharing with other cities. So we did have some partial use of that employee, but we did not have full liberty. So for example, when there was the request to have the CPR classes, and I believe it was the women's, was it the women's guild? Yeah. We could have done that 2 nights to accommodate other people, but we couldn't do it 2 nights because we really didn't have the access to be able to have personnel for that. So the demand that we're getting in the city seems to be far outpacing or outstripping what we can pull from that, what was that grant position. And that was a grant position that was shared across the county.
I would like to see more examples of that to justify it,
Sure.
because to me, I don't see the demand there. That's a full-time position for a second night of CPR training.
It's
And
just
I'm
an
sure,
example.
I know
right.
that's one example. That's why I'm asking for more, because it would help justify it and explain it in my head. The speed zone program with the ticketing, which is very interesting. And obviously, everybody knows that I've been kind of all over you guys about the speeding that's going on out there. But is this only in this? I know it's only in the school zones, but it's only during school zone hours?
Correct.
Okay.
Mm.
I don't see a huge benefit to that, in my opinion, because we already have people there monitoring that as that's going on in real time. Now, that might get all the other ones that while we have somebody pulled over that are still going through, that might do that. And certainly if it improves safety, but I'd like to understand the costs on that a little bit compared, because we have an officer in those zones at all time, unless there's a major emergency. So,
So the cost on that would be virtually zero to the city.
okay,
The benefit to the city would be that partial money back. I have heard numbers around $40 a citation or whatever, but,
Okay.
and that money again to offset, I think are about the 300,000 or eat into that 300,000 toward the crossing guards. The advantage of having cameras in all of the school zones also is that we can take our traffic management folks and also put them somewhere else so that we get another benefit from them. All of the companies that do this also give us data analysis on what's going on. So if we are to see that, say, by Quiet Waters, that's our biggest headache, then we can actually move more people over to the Quiet Waters side and physically now cite them, because there is a benefit to physically citing them. If someone's doing 45 and they drive into a 15-mile-an-hour zone, that's a mandatory court appearance. You're looking at a major fine. You may actually lose your license over that, as opposed to the red light or the speed camera just sending you a $100 ticket in the mail. So there is a big advantage to having a deputy there. That is true. But the data that we would get back from these analytics would also allow the police chief to put his personnel where they're having the most problem. And even in some cases, like let's say during school time, everybody knows there's that one school zone, so they're all hauling down some other street. So we can now have some resources over there. So it does allow us to displace the resources for a little bit more strategic use.
okay. Well, I agree with, I love having that data, and I think if it's no cost to us, I think it's tremendously beneficial, but the mere presence of an officer in those school zones
Exactly.
is what creates the safety.
And you still would have the
should
school
say.
resource officers in those zones.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. And we can get more into that further at another date. You said that on slide 17, operating expenditures increased to the statutory minimum wage increase. What minimum wage increase
From $11 to $12
for the state of Florida?
for the state of
When
Florida.
did
Yes,
that
sir.
occur?
I think it's July.
July that we had that? The
It's
upcoming
this
one.
July.
It's
Yes,
the
yes.
upcoming one that
Correct.
we have coming up. Sorry,
Correct.
thank you. I
Mhm.
was gonna say, we haven't had
No,
one
no,
last,
no, correct.
the last, yeah, it's my line of work, and I was trying to think, we didn't have one. like,
It's for the upcoming.
We've got one. Yes, thank you. I think that's it.
That's it. Okay. You good?
Thank you.
There we go. Okay, next we have Ms. Terry Reinard to review the Parks and Recreation budget.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Dave told me we were going to put these in the order of importance, but I guess he changed his mind because everybody knows it starts in parks. But let's get serious. For recent achievements, one of the things that we are most proud of is our community engagement cafes. We started these last March. We have had 8 since the beginning of the fiscal year. And we use these for a variety of community activities. So, for instance, when we very first started having conversation about the Oviedo Playground, which construction will start tomorrow for all of you who have been waiting and anxiously awaiting that. The idea of a destination playground, what's it mean? What's it for? How do we make this our central park? We got a lot of really good feedback from the community. We also used it when we had a special session with the Historical Society to talk about Brand Hilda and what was important and what how we were going to kind of phase through their intentions of getting some good information out there, oral histories, and also education boards, and what the community wanted to see. So currently, we're just getting ready to purchase a new playground for Crystal Heights. And again, we met with the community. We had community engagement cafe. We actually went out to Crystal Heights Central. It's a bus stop. So we had fed the kids some hot dogs and the parents that all picked the kids up and really got some good feedback. So the idea that these are public parks, public spaces, and that the community has a voice is really important to us. Besides the things that we worked on individually through the Community Engagement Cafe, one of the things that these are intended for, and it's modeled after World Engagement Cafe, but the relationships that we're building are probably more important than the meeting to meeting outcomes. And I think I get a sense the community feels like we're really listening, and we are. And I would encourage that to continue to be something that we put a lot of energy into. GPS, we are catching up with technology. We have Ron and his team have helped us with GPS mapping of all parks and park amenities. So we are able to know how many trash cans we have at a location, how many benches, picnic tables, drinking fountains, and that's good. The Teen Adventures All Summer, we started that last summer, had over 250 kids involved. We believe this is really important. So this is geared toward middle school, high school, and these are activities, a lot of them in the evening, to continue to give kids positive opportunities for, what to do with their free time. Landscape improvements. You're aware that we had, thank you, a decent amount of money in the capital, a very good amount of money in the capital. And we targeted, between Eric and I working together, we targeted 4 areas that will get brand new landscapes. And that's both the north and south entrances on Federal, the entrance coming in from the north on Military, and the entrance coming in from the west on Hillsborough. So those went to a design firm. It was actually CGA. They went through a series of 40%, 60%, 90%. Those drawings and plans are finally done. They're at FDOT. I am not 100% sure, and Eric, you can correct me, if those are going to get encumbered this year. But if not, we've asked for that money to roll forward because we know it's going to be really close to that fiscal year switchover. We installed a new playground at Constitution Park. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to see that. We've gotten very positive feedback. It is our first playground to have top turf, which is kind of the newest. It has good attenuation, it has good accessibility, and it holds up better to the UV than the old port-in-place surfacing. Sponsorship package, we developed a sponsorship packet. I think I remember sitting in this room last year and hearing that that was a priority, so that has been done. Recent achievements, beach. We finally got the floors coated. It's epoxy coating that matches the floors in the Kirk Cottrell Pavilion. They seem to hold up well and look a lot better than the previous. Previously, we had some that were painted, some that were raw concrete, and it gives a much cleaner, more consistent look. You're aware of the Bosque, which was, I still have other cities calling to say, how did you pull that off? And right place, right time, I think is the answer. But that was a huge opportunity for us to get art, public art, and also some fitness equipment out of it.
Ahead of you or am I good?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're good. I'm sorry. I thought you were telling me to hurry up. I'm trying. We do a lot of stuff.
You're fine.
So anyway, that was a big deal. That painting sold for over $100 million. For those people who don't know about Bosque, he was a young artist that died young at age 27, I believe. And there's a kind of a renaissance in the youth community, fascinated with the fact that he went from a street artist, basically a graffiti artist, to someone who sold things for over $100 million. So replaced the scoreboards at the middle school. I think I remember that being a request probably my first week here. So I'm glad we got that done. And then River Glen had been on the table for a couple of years, and we got that area cleaned up, fenced around, planted, and hopefully you've noticed there are some poinciana trees that are new to that location. Current initiatives, working with Priscilla and her team on the pool renovations, the new bulkhead. Looks like the timing is going to be good to get the bulkhead in before the pool opens. Not that we're celebrating that in terms of how long, but there's a positive side to the complications that we've had. So Johnny McKeithen, that is our newest project in terms of overall and working with the community on a master plan. I know you've gotten some feedback about the fence. I appreciate Commissioner Preston. You came out to the meeting we had with the community, and the majority of what I'm hearing and what I heard that night is that it's an improvement. One of the biggest things we did to that park so far, and we have lots of improvements to make there, is we eliminated the pinch point. So there's a north and a south section of that park, and there was a city property that was overgrown with a lot of foreign growth, and you only had about a 12-foot space to walk between those two sections. So it was a little uneasy and a little scary. CPTED is important in park design, and that pinch point has been eliminated and just opened up the park. And I go by there often. It's kind of my pet project right now. And I am noticing a lot more pedestrian activity, people using the trail, people walking from the front to the back of the park. So proud of that. West Deerfield Community Center. Here's another one that's been on the table a while. We are making great progress. Under contract. We will be, I believe, at the next commission meeting, bringing forward a change order, and that is a combination of things. It's programming that I recognized when we first saw it. It was a little bit, very little bit of asbestos removal that hadn't been completed. And then Rodney and his park rangers and the idea of kind of a western point for all of the things that fall in public safety is important. What are we going to do with that space? Teen programming, hopefully geared toward middle school teens. Health and wellness, we can't do enough of that. And I'm talking about adult fitness and opportunities during the day. We program pretty decent at night, but we need more programming during the day. Mommy and Me, for example, homeschool, those sorts of things. Community meeting space. And then, of course, it will give us another site for potential summer camp. Tigner Center replacement. You all know where we're at as far as the construction on that. But one of the main things that we will be involved with is working with the community through Community Engagement Cafe to help determine the programming for that facility. I can say as a park professional, it'd be great if we had taekwondo on Tuesday nights, but if the community doesn't say that, it's not if we build it, if we produce it, they will come. So we need to work with the community on that. Court resurfacing, we finished OMRC, new floor in the gym at OMRC. It has a purchase order, as does the Villages of Hillsborough basketball courts and tennis court and the Constitution basketball and tennis court. I saw some feedback on the pictures that Dave Hunt took, and so there's a little bit of explanation. There's three ways you can repair a court. One is you can resurface it with this polymer that helps anything from getting worse. The cracks are going to mirror. They're going to mirror no matter what you do. A more expensive way is to do asphalt overlay. Again, the cracks are going to mirror, but wider, especially down here with the heat. The third way, which is the most expensive way, but the most long-lasting way, is to float an asphalt. So what you could do is you had concrete surface there, you put in a layer of rock, a curb around the whole thing, and then you put in a couple inch asphalt overlay. That's a very expensive process, but it works. It worked in freeze and thaw up north. It works down here in the heat. If we hopefully put the cover on that, that may be something we want to consider in the future. But with the money that we had, we think the polymer was the best decision. So it looks great. Yeah, you go out there and you see some hairline cracks. Those are not structural cracks. So just wanted to make sure everyone understood that. Cemetery improvements, new sod, new hedges. Again, that was something I've heard from the time I first got here. We're about 2/3 of the way done. There is a delay sometimes between the time we prep, which means we kill everything and wait for the new sod to come. We can have sod scheduled. It may be 3 or 4 different times. Sod farms are usually in low-lying areas. It's not uncommon for them to be flooded. So patient with us when you see something killed. We try and put up we're working on this, but a lot of times it's the sod delivery that is out of our control. Program that we would like to initiate is what we call the SHAPE program, Safe, Healthy, Attractive Public Environment. And basically that's an inspection. We've been talking with the park ranger supervisor about perhaps this would be a good tool for them to use, and it grades the level of maintenance. So you make determination on how much cleanliness, what does cleanliness look like? Is it a 1, a 2, a 3? And then there are scores. And then we can use those scores, that information, to make decisions on, do we have the right number of staff? Are they getting the right leadership? Are we holding them accountable? Why is it that these scores are higher than these scores? I'm a huge fan of park equity. Every park should have the same outcome. That doesn't always mean the same amount of hours in every park. Park partners, we've been approached by the Rotary to kind of start an adopt a park program again. This is something we need to come up with an agreement format and what that looks like. One of the things we've talked about with them is extra eyes. We can never get enough eyes on the parks, and maybe working with our maintenance management system to be able to send work orders directly in if they notice a light out or a trash can that didn't get taken care of that day or whatever that might be. So excited to work on that, but it's currently an initiative. And then a restroom at Constitution Park will be similar to one at Pioneer Boat Dock, and that is scheduled to be done yet this year with this fiscal year money. Excuse me. Future considerations, park master plan. This has been something that hasn't been done since 2004. It's very critical. I will put this caveat on it. A lot of park master plans, and certainly the one we had done, are done according to national standards. I think, and you're going to keep hearing Community Engagement Cafe, this is something that we have to have a lot of public input on. And let me give you an example. In the 2004 study, it said we needed 10 more additional football fields and 17 additional tennis courts based on the national standard. So we don't even have that much acreage, open space. But it isn't something that you can just pull a number off a shelf and that's what every community cookie cutter needs. This is something that our community needs to tell us what are the needs, not for today, but for the next 5 to 10 years. And what's that look like? And, what kinds of improvements are going to be made? Johnny McKeithen Park improvements, we've talked about that. We do have a contract currently for new restroom, new pavilion. Hoping to also get a new full court basketball court. There's just a little pad there now. And that's something, if we don't get it all done this year, we would like to see continue next year. New Constitution Park Community Center, you heard that yesterday in the CIP. It's the last of our community centers that needs a redo. And that will be a year or so in the planning process, but hopefully that'll start next year. Continue to grow our athletic programs, adults and adult sports, lacrosse has been mentioned several times. And the idea of bringing baseball back to Oviedo McKeithen Park. And the idea is to bring that back through a program called Renewing Baseball in the Inner City, an RBI program sponsored by the National Baseball League. And Liz has been doing some backup work and some homework on that. Hopefully we'll see something soon. I mentioned the cover for the basketball court at OMRC. Additional pedestrian lighting, we talked about that yesterday. Additional amenities in parks for healthy lifestyles. And this is really a lot of adult fitness, whether that's a few elliptical pieces around a playground so that if I'm sitting there with my kids playing, I have something more than just to sit on a bench. Also using them as social centers and providing several pieces congregated together. We used to think it was better to put one piece here and there all along the trail. The science now tells us bring them together, allows socialization and a better feeling of safety. Pier renovations and closures, we are starting to look at what that's going to look like, what that means. It may give us some opportunity for programming that we have not previously thought of in other spaces along the beach that are not necessarily the pier. You know, we asked for permission to apply for the grant. We have not heard back from Bloomberg, but nobody has, so that's a good sign. And then something we need to think about is CRA may be limited in their ability to fund special events. I'm sure there'll be a lot more conversation about that. But currently they support the events on the beach to the tune of $239,000. I know I'm running out of time. Overall, the budget looks like it goes up, but when you look at just the total change for the department of $1 million, there's two things driving that, and then we tightened our buckle on a lot of other things. One is the landscape maintenance contract went up by $540,000. That is also scheduled to start Monday. Hopefully we get the third contractor in and rolling. And then the other was the shift of the restroom maintenance used to be funded in environmental, and that now will be funded for all of the parks in ours to the tune of $466,000. So it's kind of a pretty steady budget. And like I say, we made some adjustments. Excuse me. In administration, the two big drivers are the master plan we talked about as an increase. The other is this idea of mobile data collection. And I know there was a little bit of conversation yesterday about AI, but this basically is, you all know it, wherever your phone is, somebody's capturing that information. So we have trouble when we're working on the ROI for events, which we're going to get to here in a minute, of counting. How do you count 80,000 to 100,000 people at the 4th of July? This will be able to give us that data. Not only will we won't know who you are, we'll know how many were there, what they bought on the way there, how far did they come from. A lot of information that I think will help us in terms of when we look at our return on investment, not just the financials, but also the other impacts. Athletics, this one is pretty status quo. There is a reduction in part-time and overtime hours to the tune of 35,000. You do see an increase in the operational, but that was just a shift of the sports turf maintenance cost used to be in park maintenance. Now it is in athletics. The capital outlay, pretty much the same. We did make some major improvements this year on a few of the capital outlay items, but this will allow us, the small 32,000 is kind of our annual cost to replace bleachers and goals and nets and soccer goals and the things that kind of wear and tear out in the course of the year. Aquatics, Again, this looks like a huge downshift in operating expenditures, but yet we all know chemical costs are going up. This was the replacement of the pumps and motors and determined to be an operational cost that we did the change order for to bring those above ground so that we don't have the flooding and the issues that we've had sometimes in the past. This is another place that got a little bit of the, the janitorial expenses moved from environmental to us. There is a reduction in part-time seasonal. This is positions that are very difficult for us to fill, and that is a small reduction. And then we already talked about the pump and motor replacement. Cemetery, again, you see a little bit of a decrease in the operating expenditure, and that's what I was saying. We're about 2/3 of the way done with sod replacement in both cemeteries. We're still going to need to do a lot of sod work, but not quite as much as we've done this year. And the hedges, for the most part, have all been replaced with podocarpus, and hopefully that expense will just be a little bit of maintenance expense and not to the extent we had to do it. Park maintenance operating, we are asking for one additional position here. And this is a facilities technician. So there's a lot of little work orders that we send to environmental that cause them, painting a restroom may not make it up the chart in terms of all the things Priscilla has to take care of. But it is important to us. It's important to the public image. So those kinds of things, minor repairs, fixing showers on the beach, cleaning the diaphragms on the showers, getting pavilions prepped for the weekend with extra pressure cleaning, painting, those kinds of things, this person that is a semi-skilled will be able to assist us with. We mentioned already the shift of the janitorial expenses, $466,000. With that expense also comes the responsibility. So we will be doing the oversight on all of the contractual janitorial maintenance for park facilities. Landscape increase, we talked about that. That's two things driving that. One is we put the irrigation on this because there was always this question of, did they break it or did we not fix it? So now it's all in one place. The other thing is we tightened up the specs. We have heard you. We know that maintenance and entryways is important, and we have tightened those specs up in terms of expectation, particularly along weeds, mulching, those kinds of things. And that's good on that. You keeping up? All right. Recreation, the reduction of one rec leader position is not significant, but just wanted to make sure we were transparent. The Ignite Mental Health Summit, the first year we did that on a grant through the COVID money. This year we charged it to special events, but that really is an activity that happens in recreation and they do all the work for it. So we shifted that expense from special events over to recreation. The last one is pre-prom is deleted. That cost is $7,500. It's not that we don't want to see this continue. We do think it would be better done through a sponsor, partnership, members of the community. It really isn't a Parks and Rec activity. When we have things, we try and make those open to everyone. This is limited and specific to those kids that are heading to prom. Quiet Waters is definitely the best location for it. So we're recommending that it is not funded next year for $7,500. Special events. This is, as I said, the reduction in the mental health summit. And then let's get into some specifics. You can see the 23 budget versus the 24 budget, and the cost goes down just a hair. There are a couple things notable, and the biggest is Boots on the Beach. I'm recommending that we eliminate that event and combine it with the fall festival. So still have the same music genre, extend the hours of the fall festival, and try and combine our resources a little bit. We get complaints because we overuse the main beach parking lot and the road closures that are attached to that. So I'd like to recommend this year that we eliminate that event, but increase our efforts for the fall festival. Pretty sure I heard someone say ROI a couple times. So this is also another piece that the mayor has asked for over the last couple of years, and I appreciate staff, Liz and her team putting this together. So I just want to explain what it is. The expense from 23 minus any revenue, if there was any, and then the net cost per person. The attendance numbers are estimates, our best guess estimates. We do a lot of those estimates with public safety. The software I mentioned earlier would help us capture more accurate numbers on attendance. So these are the cost per person. What this doesn't tell us is those benefits that are intangible, those that we can't weigh. We looked at them and said, well, this has an economic, this has a community benefit, but we did not get to a point where we could put a dollar amount on that. And that's probably the next step. So summer programs, I think we finally right-sized the position number. The last few years, we've had several positions budgeted but not filled. This year, I believe we've right-sized. We have 2 camps this year, one at Constitution that caps at 50. It has been capped for about a month with a waiting list. The other one is capacity for 75 at the middle school. And that one I think is at about 46, 47 participants right now. So we do still have space in that camp, but this is more in alignment. The other thing we did was improve the hiring process and allowing 16, 17-year-olds to work as counselors, not supervisors, not site supervisors, not assistant site supervisors, but as counselors alongside full-time staff. And then we increased our TAS money by $55,000. Transportation is moving back to community services. That's where most of the service is generated. We are suggesting that we delete the transportation manager funding and add a full-time bus driver. We have 2 positions in that division that are not the bus coordinator and the transportation manager. They spend a good 80% of their time on the road because bus drivers are still so difficult for us to get. We think if we have another position when we have call-outs, when we have FMLA, when we have things that cause us to be low on drivers, that would give us the right position for what that time is been spent doing. Waterfront operations, we talked about this a little bit on adding a part-time pier attendant and the shift of the janitorial services. That's it. That's all we do. It's a lot.
Go right ahead, Commissioner Preston.
Number one, the cut in the pre-prom, if you take that away, you will isolate this community. I'm letting you know that. That's something that has been in place for the longest time and people depend on that. And so I'm just telling you to relook at that. Pre-prom is important. The other thing is that in order to put on any event in the city of Deerfield Beach, the cost over the years will go up. It will not go down. Yet I'm looking at the Juneteenth and you're taking away $15,000. It's a lot of money to take away from an event that we want to be a quality event for the community, and to be able to put that on so that we can have people gravitate to it, understand it, and it be one of our signature events. It's very difficult when you're taking money away from it. And then because at that point, what we're saying is just put it on, and it appeases to a certain extent people, and yeah, we did have it, but we didn't really put, we're taking money. So if we take 15,000 away now, what do we do next year? Eventually, the event itself can be obsolete.
I think the goal is, to look at those we did the ROIs for a reason. And the goal is, and we have this idea of the family, reunion tents this year, which I think is a good investment for us. But the idea is you got to build the crowd to make it, and we haven't been successful in that. You see, we've done some different advertising this year. We have some magnets, we bought some benches. We think we have a great lineup. Like I say, we do have these family reunion tents. We got to get people out there so that we can justify the cost per person.
Well, the whole idea is that, again, in justifying that, we have to be convinced. And I do see a different promotion this year, but we have to be convinced as well internally that we're doing everything that we can to promote an event of that magnitude. And a lot of it comes with education in terms of it not being predominant in one area, that we're actually doing everything that we can do to extend the information beyond district lines. And in the past, we haven't done such a good job with that. So when you see declining numbers, we have to accept the responsibility. We just haven't done the job. That's the bottom line. If you wanted to be a big event, you wanted to be a signature event, then we have to invest the time and invest the money for it to be so, not wait for it to happen and then we can justify the money.
Yeah, I think you'll see those changes this year. I hope. Like I say, we've made those adaptions. We do have Juneteenth flags all over the city,
Yeah,
not
you
just
do.
in
You do.
District 2. We put the magnets on the trucks because they go all over the city, not just in District 2. So I think you'll see those efforts pay off. And if that's the case and our cost per person comes down and we've done those things we think we need to do to draw the attendance up, then yeah, I could see myself back here asking you all, hey, I made a mistake. Let's look at funding that more.
Sometimes, my feeling is that I don't know that any idea that's when it's presented, that it yields what you see in vision right away. Sometimes in order to get to where you need to be, you may need to make the initial investment and do everything you can do to grow it. So every great idea that has really exploded in terms of what it's able to yield, I don't know that it started without making that investment and a commitment to saying we need to do this to be able to get it to the level that we want. But if we do that, I think we start to see the results that we need to see. And I think sometimes we're also quick, if we didn't get, when we're doing statistical data, we didn't get this number, we didn't get this number, we didn't get this number. Juneteenth is, in terms of a holiday event in the city of Deerfield Beach, is still young. It's a baby. And so I don't know that we did everything that we can do. In fact, I'm convinced we didn't initially to really promote it like it should be, to understand the educational component behind it. It just stands alone. And if we just throw money at it, it's not going to work. It deserves a commitment and understanding and something that you're really promoting. Now I forget what show this, what TV channels have. They're doing a national thing in Juneteenth from Texas.
Where it started.
Yeah, it's this exactly where it started. Exactly, Juneteenth started in Texas, Galveston, I think, wasn't it?
I thought it was,
It could be.
yeah,
It could
yeah.
be. Maybe not Galveston, but but it's a national. And so they are using that platform and obviously investing a lot of money to educate people and to make it a success. And I think that we should embrace that model as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hudak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand your point, Commissioner. I really do with regards to Juneteenth. But it's the second most dollars that we put towards any event last year. And we attracted 500 people. But you're right. It's a new event and it does need time to grow. And it's still going to be the fourth highest event that we put money towards. So I think we are giving it its opportunity, but you're right. I mean, we are trying to promote it. It's important to promote it. I mean, MLK, it's the third highest and we've had that for years. And the attendance is 500 people. So we have to figure out how to promote these things better. You put $61,000 on something and you only get 500 people. It's not that people don't care about it. We've got to figure out, are they going to other events? What is it that we're doing that is not attracting the participation that we're hoping for? And that's, I think, what we need. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change things. We're trying to change the advertisement. The Boots on the Beach, it attracted 10 times the amount that Juneteenth did. And the recommendation is to actually combine it with Ocean Way Holiday. And what do we spend? We spent $26,000 on that, or $47,000 on that. So I think what we're trying to do is just figure out what works, what doesn't work, and how we need to advertise in order to make sure, because these ROIs, as you can see on the side, we have to be able to justify it. And I don't think it's that bad of an idea to try to refocus the funds. I know that this is near and dear to all of our hearts. And hopefully this new targeting will justify the event and draw out more people, because I do think it's extremely important.
I don't want to chime in on this, but I guess I will. I think our staff does a great job advertising these events. I don't think they cherry pick which event they're going to advertise and which ones they're not. I think they advertise all events equally. I mean, I see the ads, I see what they put on social media. You can't force people to come. I think they do a great job advertising all of the events. So if people don't come, they don't come. And that's where we have to evaluate where we're getting the return on investment per person coming to the events. If we need to reorganize and combine events, then that's something we need to look at. But to blame staff for not advertising, I don't think is fair. With respect to Juneteenth, we did talk about an educational component, but I'm looking at their budget. For $58,000, I don't know where the education component comes in. You can go through the entire 2-page budget and maybe you can put the Black Farmer display in the education component for $950, but I don't know where carnival rides and funnel cakes and lacrosse and hip hop dancing goes into educating what is behind in the purpose of Juneteenth. So maybe we need to repurpose the dollars to go into what we really intended for this event, and maybe that will draw the crowd that we're seeking. I don't know, but I'm just giving my 2 cents on this as we go forward. That's it.
Thank you. Page 23, you talked about it briefly, about a 2004 master plan, and I agree that we need to have a master plan. If I recall, there was a lot of money that we went out, this predates me, but we went out for money for Pioneer Park for renovation. Part of the master plan they created then was to have a walkway that went from Pioneer Park all along the Hillsborough Canal out to Deer Creek. And they actually got funding for it, which is amazing because they didn't own any of the property in between there. Biggest bunch of crap I've ever heard in my life, if you look at that master plan. So let's hope we don't repeat that, because how you're going to go ahead and connect the walkway when you don't own the land pretty much from Pioneer Park to Deer Creek is really interesting. But we had it in there and they came up with money for it. And they had to return that money and repurpose that money because they actually got grant money, I believe, for it, and realized, oh, we don't own the property. Shocker. But I love the idea of baseball and looking at that. There's a rich history. I know over at Avita McKeithen Park, there used to be baseball fields there that were very popular. 1966, the Chicago White Sox had a single-A baseball team in Deerfield Beach. The Chicago Sun Sox, they called it the Deerfield Beach Sun Sox is what they were called. They did half a season here in 1966, and somewhere Amy Kay's up there talking to the players that were on that team, I'm sure right now about it, but it was very brief, but there's a rich history of that. Page 29, the full-time facilities technician, if that's going to help us bring forth faster maintenance, I'm all for that, because we need to have that right away. That is, yeah, we need to do that right away. As far as the events, you're combining, you're taking some of the resources for the country music festival and putting them into the fall festival.
Correct. The concepts, the timeframes are fairly similar. One's in the end of October. The other one is the early part of November. And the idea is, there is some commonality, countryness about the pumpkins and the hayride and even the storytellers that we have. So the idea is, extend the hours, put a little more country music concert sorts of stuff in there, and eliminate some funding or combine some funding. Our fall festival is a hugely popular
No,
event.
You don't have to give me the history of that. I got you. I'm right there with you. I asked the specific question of not justification, because I understand why. But I will tell you the problem that I see with that is that park is a small park located smack in the middle of a residential neighborhood. The parking there, when these events go on, people are parked in everyone's yards all around because there's not enough parking at that park. So you're taking a monster event that we have at Country Music Fest, which brings in a lot of people to the beach, totally different. Nothing draws like the beach. But to try to put it out there, there needs to be some sensitivity about parking. There needs to be sensitivity about the impact of the neighborhoods there, because it's a big park, and it's a great park, but we see what Fall Festival does to those residents over there. And I lived across the street. Commissioner Grosky lives on the park. It's can be problematic. So I caution what we do there, just to make sure we can throttle it in a way that doesn't negatively impact the neighborhood.
Understood. Thank you.
Dave, did you have something?
No, just that the idea is not to take boots on the beach and label it boots on the beach and bring it into Pioneer Park, but let's take the elements that we may have with that. Doesn't have to be a.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I totally understand that, but I think if you take too much of that over there and a big chunk of that crowd over there, we're going to probably have some problems. So just figure out how we do that. As far as page 33 with the return on investments, thank you for doing this to give us an idea. I disagree as far as the promotion of the events. Look, Juneteenth is a brand new event. We know that needed starter seed money. Reducing it back and wait till the crowd comes, it makes sense to me. I don't know how we can say we don't do good promotion. We're going to find out in a week, because or less than a week. This Saturday we're going to know, but I see it everywhere. I see it out by me. There's a park. There's a bench right outside my home that I can see right there in Hillsborough. There it is right there. I can see the Juneteenth advertisement right there. I think it's there. The reduction is right, because I don't want to build this massive, huge event that no one's there for, and then hoping they're going to show up and happen to come by and say, hey, this is a cool event. It needs to grow. In my opinion, you need to start it off right. And I think we've done that. And I think it's going to get better and better. It is new, but I think this reduction makes sense, not to completely eliminate. We're certainly not giving up on it, but to allow it to grow to the size of what the budget was. When you first start out, you're not sure where the budget should be, how many people are going to come out. It's got an opportunity to do there. And I think the reduction is small, but you look at the return on investment, the cost per person just doesn't add up. So reducing that a bit makes sense to me. You look at an event like Sip and Stroll. Sip and Stroll has no advertisement. Not that it's a knock on staff, but so little advertisement for Sip and Stroll. It sells out every single year. It's in a small little park that we have. And the return on investment of that is for $20, we have 225 people there. $216 for Juneteenth, $20 per person on there. And it's an event that actually sells out. We turned people away this year. If anything, I'd like to see that done twice, because it's that popular. I look at some of these others, and I don't believe the promotion is the problem. There's some other issue here. The popularity of these events just it's not there. They're not showing up. They're grand events. They're great events. But for whatever reason, and it's not advertising because I don't buy that. Whatever reason, it's not an event that's drawing a lot of people, and we're putting way too much money into these events that aren't drawing people in. I think the community engagements that we're doing, these cafes, are going to help us get to the heart of what the problem is why we're not getting the turnout that we do. And I encourage us to do more of those and keep that moving forward, because this is the kind of information we need to have to help us make some of these decisions on that. Moving the bus driver over to what we're doing. I talked to Dave and I told him before, I don't like the way we used to do back in the older days, that we used to constantly have a switch in our budget where we moved departments around and you couldn't, or we renamed stuff and it was hard to figure out where we were before and figure that out. This I think it's the only one you have in the budget, I believe.
This is the
from
only
what you
one.
told me, and this makes a lot of sense. So I'm completely on board with that. Hiring a full-time person and eliminating that other position, because I think there's some redundancy. Just from first glance, from what I can tell, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, sure.
One of the things that I said is that I saw a difference in how this was projected this year. I see the advertising, but let me just tell you, a couple of my colleagues have responded with saying, suggesting at least that I criticized staff. Well, let me just say that if you were to look at how an event is, how it is projected and the amount of information that gets out there, it is how that information, you might put that information in a way that only a few people see it. It's out there, but you have to know how to reach a certain demographic to be able to make sure that they understand what it is that you're doing. And sometimes without meaning to be so, there can be a disconnect in communication, how you project information. So you can say on one hand, just the black and white, that, hey, the information is out there and then we didn't get a response. I can tell you that if you had an event and you were talking to people of a certain language, you have to know exactly that language and how to get them to be able to respond to whatever you're doing, or else you still had the information out there and they knew nothing. So it's how that information gets out there. So I'm going to say again, I don't think that in the past, this time I do see a difference. In the past, I don't think we've done our best job in getting the information out so that people can understand exactly what you're doing so that they can actually participate. So, the other thing is that, we'll just have to disagree, Mayor, wherein you're thinking that the cutting of this is appropriate. I think not. I think it's important to make sure if let's say if we were to do this and a couple years down the road, you said, listen, here's where we are. We've given this, 3-4 years or whatever, and let's try another strategy. That may be a more appropriate. And this is in its infamous stages of being created for an event I just think it's too early to take money away. What you look for is how to invest more time and resources into getting people to understand why this is an event that we want them to attend. Taking away the money, my colleagues obviously all agree that you guys have done the wrong thing. I do not share that opinion. Okay, I disagree. That's it. And, we're in the United States of America, so we can just disagree.
No, nothing wrong with that. I agree with that, but here's what I don't think we should be doing. We shouldn't be creating events and then telling people, here's the reason why you should be going to it. They need to come to us and say, we want an event like this and here's why. It shouldn't be the other way around. Now, that appears to be what we're doing. We're creating events and we're having to go to people and beg them, you really should come to this. And we're spending more money. We're spending $125.78 per person for MLK Day. Not a new holiday. Advertising everywhere. Very popular event, in my opinion, and yet the crowd doesn't show up. I don't think that's a language barrier thing. I don't know what it is. That's what people choose. I think maybe it's the fact that it's on a Monday and not everybody has that day off. It's a shame.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be that way, but it's problematic. Okay, if you look at some of these other, if you look at Juneteenth, this is a holiday that absolutely is the freedom of the United States of America. It's a fantastic day that we should be celebrating. It's a new holiday. But to go to people and say, here's why you need to show up, they need to be coming to us and saying,
And I agree
it
with
needs
that.
to show up. It should always be from the public generating the interest and the need, not us creating something and expecting them and trying to convince them to show up. If we do that, we're going to waste a lot of money. We're going to get nowhere, in my opinion.
Sometimes the need is simplicity because, like, for instance, the 4th of July, why do people show up on the beach in such great numbers for the 4th of July? Are they actually celebrating independence? I would think not. They're just there to see the fireworks, to eat from the different vendors and have a beer or two. Do they understand exactly what they're there for? But you've tapped into something that attracts a bunch of people for whatever the reason is. So sometimes maybe just the idea of a simplistic format, rethinking, like I said, just really getting into the understanding the dynamics of what you have to do. Because I doubt that anybody really shows up that beach. If you was to talk to them about 4th of July, they could tell you little to nothing about it. But yet they show up.
I'm going to, as we said, we can disagree on that, but that's okay. I hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can we take a 5? Let's do, well, because you guys don't take 5, let's do 7 minutes. I don't believe it. Wait, let's see. Let's come back at 7:45. Is that okay to finish at the last one we have?
Sure. And we have gone through two of the presentations. We have two more to go, sustainable management. And Mr. Chad Gressick will be presenting this portion of the workshop.
Thank you. Good evening, Chad Gressick. Halfway there. That's the good news. The bad news is I've got about 800 slides, so it might be a little while. Just kidding. First and foremost, the city manager referenced last night that the solid waste fund is projected to have revenues that exceed expenses this year, which I'm happy to report that's the first time I've ever been able to do that in a budget process. So I think that's great news. Obviously, we have a bit of a hole we have to dig ourselves out of in regards to the fund balance deficit, so this will help do that. Eventually, we'd like to build some reserves. And ultimately, you'll see later in the presentation, we're looking to reinvest in the program, which ultimately will help to improve the customer service performance and experience. We did establish the citywide fleet replacement program. We have in excess of 250 pieces of rolling stock. So that was a significant endeavor. It is a moving target because of just the delays that we're still seeing in delivery of equipment. Obviously, costs are still highly variable. So that is something that at least we have a framework that we can work towards in the future. On the grants and alternative funding, happy to report that we've acquired almost $1 million in alternative funding and grants programs, specifically a compost piloting program, which I'll get into more detail later on. A vulnerability assessment, which will look at some of the work that's been done from the stormwater side, but also look at king tide, also look at climate change and other factors to identify vulnerable areas within the city and make recommendations for improvement. And then an energy efficiency conservation block grant that we are going to be using to do a deep dive into our fleet, to look at utilization analysis, look at alternative fuel, and really just to reduce expenses there to maximize the fleet operation. Of course, last but not least is our joint beach nourishment project that we conducted in tandem with the town of Hillsborough Beach and the city of Deerfield Beach. This truly was a historic project that's never been done in this area. Again, it involved 3 communities, 2 counties, multiple permitting agencies where we actually shared permits, and it occurred inlet to inlet. So it was truly a really great regional collaboration. It resulted in approximately 33,000 cubic yards of sand placed on our beach at a cost of approximately $1 million. And that may seem like a lot, but if we were to do that project using our traditional truck haul methods that we've done in the past, it would have cost 3 times that amount. Additionally, there are significant opportunities that exist for us to receive in excess of 60% reimbursement of those costs. So again, just a great project all around. So great that we were recently notified that the project received a national award through the American Beaches and Shore Preservation Association for the best restored beach. So Patrick Bardis and myself will be going up to Rhode Island in the fall to present on this project. And then in the spring, hopefully the city manager, along with the elected official or 2, will be able to go up and accept the reward on our behalf for this project. Next slide, please. So some of our current initiatives, we are still looking at the residential reroute. However, what we found in COVID was that we may have cut a little too deep in some regards, cut a little too many routes. And obviously that resulted in, a lack of bench strength, so to speak. So that is something we're looking at. There may be opportunities there, but, that's still being addressed. We did literally just implement a solid waste customer service call center. So if you do call our main line, you will get to an automated attendant, which will hopefully streamline the customer service experience to those that are calling solid waste. I know we all get those calls and those emails that, I've called the department, nobody answers. This will allow us to track that information and hopefully, again, improve the customer service experience. We are on the threshold of releasing a sustainability planning statement of work, which will look at a community-wide sustainability planning effort, looking at ways that we can increase solar utilization in the community, alternative fuels, electric vehicles, those sorts of things. CNG fuel maximization, that's obviously something that's very, very important to us. We have a very aggressive vehicle replacement plan, as the city manager showed last night. We are looking to request 5 CNG solid waste collection vehicles in this year's budget, which will hopefully get us to the point where, when we eventually do receive those vehicles, because we are still waiting on a truck that we ordered in 2021, believe it or not, that they will be a significant boost to our operations. Our garage exhaust retrofit project is almost complete from the design standpoint. That is a project that's going to roll over into the next fiscal year for construction. The city manager referenced our trainee STEP program. Obviously, I think we've talked many times in regards to our challenges with the mechanic trainees and finding the mechanics. I think this is a creative way for us to bring in talented individuals and promote them. Give them a step to go up once they get in with the city. Our fleet manager firmly believes that if we bring in young, motivated mechanics, we can really show them the value of staying with the city in the long term and giving them that path of growth through a mechanic 1, 2, and 3 opportunity. Our disposal contract is set to expire this winter, December. As I've referenced in the past, and the city manager's referenced in the past, obviously we do anticipate pretty significant cost increases on that contract. Just in relation to everything that's going on, we've been fortunate that our contract was within its existing terms, so we didn't have to go back out to the street and encounter a lot of the cost increases that everybody else has encountered. And then last but not least is our onboard camera system. I don't know if you can see it from here, but there's 2 things wrong with that picture. Number one, if you can see on the left-hand side, there's a car right in front of where the bulk pile is. So this allows us to visually capture a pile that we can't collect or a container that we can't service. That's huge from a customer verification standpoint. When we have individuals call in and say, hey, you missed our material, we can go back into the camera system and identify whether or not that actually happened. The other issue that we have here is the driver. As you can see, he's not wearing his seatbelt. So that's something that we can coach the driver on and show that, this is something that he needs to do. This is really great technology that we're implementing on all of our solid waste collection equipment. Next slide. As far as our future considerations, we do want to reevaluate the artificial reef project. As we know, the first go around did not happen any way that anybody wanted or intended. So we want to go back and start over and reevaluate the goals, number one, to make sure that we're all clear on what we want this thing to look like, where we want it to be. Is it going to conflict with other uses? Is it going to conflict with future beach nourishments? Making sure it's done the right way, making sure we get the right vendor to install it. So that is something we are planning for in the next fiscal year. Obviously, we did enter into a 30-year settlement agreement with the town of Hillsborough. We conducted the first of 6 beach nourishments this past spring. Obviously, there's significant more work to be done there. We are actually going to go back to the drawing board because the last project we pieced together existing permits. So with this approach, we're going to start over and identify the project or projects that will best benefit the region. And again, we hope to parlay the relationship that we developed with Boca Raton. That was a win-win-win. So there is certainly some value in them wanting to participate in that in the future. And with that, we're going to need to know how to fund these projects. We can't just say, hey, we got to come up with X millions of dollars. It's best to have a fund where we can use that money and plan for implementation and also leverage that money to pursue other state and federal monies that may or may not be available. The solid waste working group, obviously, the city did agree to the second version of the ILA. So that's in the books. The next step there is to work with the group to develop a master plan, which will look at what this authority will consist of, both facilities, where the facilities are located, and ultimately how much is it going to cost. And then once that project is complete, we would then have an opportunity to decide whether or not it is something that we want to commit to for the next, I believe, 40 years. So it's that's going to be a pretty heavy lift. We know the shred program at the drop-off center was extremely popular. So again, you know, one of the things we want to do as far as reinvesting is possibly re-implementing that program at some degree at the drop-off center so that we can allow our residents to go there on a regular basis. Composting waste diversion. So compost and organics and vegetation makes approximately 30% of our waste stream. So if we're able to divert that and use it for beneficial purposes such as mulch or other things, you know, that could result in a significant cost savings for us. With the seaweed management, same perspective. Obviously, you know, we've all read the news that there's this potential blob of seaweed coming. Hopefully they're wrong, and hopefully the currents steer it somewhere else. But you know, are there beneficial uses for that material? Is there something that we can do? Obviously, there's a lot of lessons learned in the Caribbean. They've been dealing with this for a lot of years now already, where it's been pretty bad. So this is something that we can learn from them. But we do have our emergency contractors and debris monitors ready in case we need to use them, in case this seaweed hits us to the level that it could. The next couple slides, I'm going to talk to you about where we're at with our recycling program. And then I'm going to talk to you about our CART program. So hopefully you can see on this graph, there's really two bars here that are important. There's a net processing, which is what we pay net for the recycling. And then there's disposal, which is self-explanatory. That's what we pay to dispose of trash. As you can see, still a high level of variability to what's going on in the recycling markets. You can see it was high and then it dropped down. And a lot of communities jumped back into recycling. And as you can see, that was probably a mistake. So our recommendation obviously is to continue to keep the curbside program suspended until we see a sustained decrease in the net processing fees. And actually, when we go out to bid or go out to our solicitation for disposal, we will include recycling processing in that. And we're not seeing great numbers in that regard. We're seeing $190 per ton plus. So I don't think that situation is going to change anytime soon. So with that, what we're recommending to do, obviously, is to continue our drop-off centers at the 3 locations, implement some additional programs at the drop-off center, such as an incentive program for those individuals that decide to take that trip to the Central City campus. What can we do for them to incentivize them for that activity? Again, the shred program reinstatement, looking to do some sort of the pilot composting program at the drop-off center, and possibly a soil or compost giveaway to the residents. And then continue to leverage our DFB Waste Watch app, which will help to communicate a lot of these changes. Next slide. So what we want to do as part of our cart replacement program is number one, we want to remove all the 65-gallon carts, both garbage and recycling, out of the system. And I'll talk about the recycling first. The reason why we want to do that is because if we ever do start a curbside program again, we have to get folks to have a hard stop to know that they can't continue to put garbage in their recycling bin. That's what they're doing right now. So if we were to reinstitute the curbside program today, we know we're going to see off the chart, contamination rates that is just going to make it a really problematic issue. So the concept is, let's pull all those back. Let's give everybody a larger cart, which essentially will constitute the same amount of volume that they're getting today. And studies have shown that second day garbage pickup will be lighter because you're offering a larger container, which will result in operational savings and cost savings. And as you can see, the 95-gallon cart, it's wider, it's taller, it's deeper. We have Mr. Matt Kidd here in the photo. Mr. Kidd is 6'7". So we wanted to give you some scale as to the size of the garbage carts. But this is not a cheap program. This is a $1.4 million investment. But I'll give you a little example of a story here. We have several residents that received a 95-gallon cart in the past, and these carts are basically disintegrating. And they call in and they say, "Can I get a replacement cart?" And we're like, "Yeah, you can get one, but it's a 65-gallon." And they say, "No, we'll keep the 95 because we like the extra volume." So we think this will be extremely popular. We think this will be a great opportunity again to maximize our program and again to give back to the residents to some degree. Obviously, not everybody's going to be able to fit these carts within their garages, so we'll have the option of the 32 or the 65. But again, this will really be that hard stop from the recycling curbside program. Next slide. So getting into the numbers, obviously our department operates from two funds. So we operate from the general fund and the solid waste fund. The general fund, we have the coastal and waterways program and the fleet management program. And then obviously from solid waste, we have the operational collections. And overall, you can see it was about a 20% increase, but we'll get into that in more detail. So here's the solid waste operating budget. Again, the large increases are the cart replacement program, as well as the disposal cost increases. We do have the pilot of the compost grant in there, but that's actually a neutral cost because we're going to be getting grant monies back. We've also have the capital outlay carry forward because, again, as I mentioned, we haven't finished the ventilation system yet, and we still have not received that front end loader that we ordered in 2021. Slide. From the fleet management perspective, we are, as I mentioned, looking to add a mechanic trainee position. So again, the idea there is to bring in somebody who's very low level, very low and inexperienced, and train them up and give them the opportunity to go through the STEP program because, again, we've just had such a hard time finding qualified mechanics. We are going to transfer the mechanic 3 position that's funded out of the solid waste division rather. We are going to replace a truck lift. And again, as part of the incentive program for our mechanics, we are going to pay for certain certifications and licensing that they obtain. Next slide. And last but not least, from the coastal and sustainable management division, the artificial reef evaluation study, we're estimating $30,000 there. The joint renourishment phase 2 planning and permitting, that's a significant undertaking at $220,000. And then we have the vessel exclusion zone buoy maintenance at $25,000. And I believe that's the last slide. I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Question for you. I thought last year you outsourced your mechanics.
We did.
So now we're still hiring them? I thought,
It was more of it's a hybrid approach. So we had for the heavy duty fleet, we have been outsourcing a lot of that work for the garbage trucks. And we did that as a stopgap for really just a dire situation that we had with mechanics.
right.
We think we're in a position now where we can start to reel that back in. And so although we do need to add that one position, or it's actually a reallocation from one fund to the other for that mechanic 3 position, what we'd also like to start to do is test the waters to get rid of the outsource contract and bring some mechanics back in-house. We think we're at a position where we can start to look at that.
So we're gonna do some kind of an internship program and all of that stuff?
We have that. Yep. Yeah, and again, with the STEP program, we hope, and with the paying class, right, we hope that that's going to, and of course, the Great Resignation ending, hopefully with all those things coming together, we will have a better luck at getting mechanics come in.
Can we go to slide 41? If we're gonna make this work, this is where we're gonna do it, and we're gonna do it specifically with the mechanic trainee. I was recently at the YATC right over here on Martin Luther King Southwest area, right close to Triple C. They were having their graduation, and a young man, as he was graduating, they was talking about what these young people, upon graduation, what they were looking to do. And the one young man graduated early 20s. He's going to diesel mechanic school. The bell started ringing. I called Chad right away, and I said, this is the type of guy that we want to be in our program. If we're going to solve this, we need to have control over it. But again, we need to have the resources in place so that we govern the outcome. When we are outsourcing, we have no control. We're at the mercy. So why don't we build it? And, I don't mean this to be in a disrespectful way, but this young man's brain was like, you could mold it into anything you want. He was energetic. He was doing good, and his love was diesel mechanics, and that's why I called Chad. And I don't know what the latest is with him. It's did he call you?
He did.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ball's in his court.
Okay. And so if we could look at this mechanic trainee program, we have to be aggressive about recruiting potential people to come into our program and to be a part of the city plan, but the city also have to be in a position to make whatever it is that we do attractive to them, so that they don't only participate, but they stay with us, keeping them, but understanding also as well, it becomes our responsibility to create an atmosphere in which they want to be a part of what we're building here. Andre, I was so impressed with this young man. I talked with him after this. And so right over here, I mean, not everybody that graduates there is diesel minded, but there are some that are. And look at that program. That's, we know that program is great. They have credible people. They have a lot of people that are working with these young people, and they would be an asset to this community. So I applaud you with this. This is a good thing that we have, but we need to grow it. We need to take control over our destiny once and for all, and not be at the mercy of something that's being outsourced. Take it back and control it.
Thank you. Thank you. I do want to praise staff, Chad, and the job you guys did with the Renourishment Project is really outstanding. I received a few calls about it, but considering what running the pipeline along the beach, to get 3 calls from people that were more impressed that they actually could get a hold of me than they were about really complaining. I want to thank you and your staff. Outstanding job. I really appreciate it. If you want to know where you can probably send that seaweed, I'm going to say maybe to our partners in this Renourishment speech, maybe direct it that way. I do also appreciate the candor in talking about the residential reroutes and being all right with saying, hey, we missed the mark. I appreciate that. We need more of that, because that's how we're going to learn. So I appreciate the candor in that. Thank you for that. The solid waste customer service line has, I believe, resulted in fewer calls to me, but I also know that it needs to be tightened up a little bit to make sure we have people answering it. Another suggestion, if you have to coach a driver that they need to wear a seatbelt, I think you should coach them into another job. That's my opinion. The mandatory, if with the size change in the CART program, this on number 44, that gentleman makes all of those garbage cans look extraordinarily small. They look like waste baskets in an office. But if we make them mandatory, obviously, as you pointed out, we know that the size is going to be a problem for a lot of the residential communities that are limited now. So as long as we keep that option open, that's good. Slide 46, the compost pilot program, there's $300,000 that we're going to budget for, and we're going to get that money back through a grant. That money that we're budgeting for, the 300,000, once we're reimbursed with it, that's going to go back into our solid waste fund, right? Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure I know where that money's going. And number 48, the artificial reef reevaluation study. This is, I would imagine we needed to kind of reevaluate where we're at to start up that project that failed due to the contractor. Okay, perfect. I'm glad we're bringing that back. I know that's something Commissioner Drofsky has commented on, so I'm glad we're bringing that back. So thank you.
Thank you.
The last presentation we have for the evening is with Environmental Services. Priscilla Sajonic.
Good evening. So I get the pleasure to close this out tonight.
I see you're dressed as the grand finale also. That's good.
It's like the fireworks display.
Exactly.
So I'm going to briefly go through the achievements of our various divisions. We have construction and facilities, utilities, road and bridge, and stormwater and environmental services. You see some photographs here in front of you of some of the achievements from this past year. We did complete the embassy deck. You see some HVAC replacements happening there at City Hall, our truck wash station, and some emergency repairs that occurred after Hurricane Nicole. The good news is we do have a final structural plan for the repair of that international pier. So the structural repairs are imminent, but we do want to talk to the commission about some options about really creating a sense of place and a destination there at our beach. So we will be bringing forward some architectural options for you to consider. Next slide, please. And here are our current projects. Probably are well familiar with these. They're well under construction right now. Our Center for Active Aging, our Braithwaite Center for Active Aging, and Bezos Academy, as well as the Johnny L. Tigner that you see down there at the bottom. In addition to that, our lifeguard stations are well underway. We have 6 stations under construction currently, and we have 4 more planned for next year. We also have some decommissioning happening with our fire stations, the West Community Center renovations, and projects such as the FEC continuation of that railway fence, and as discussed, some signature improvements that we would like you to consider for the International Pier. Next slide. With our utilities fund, we've had a number of improvements. We've been following our integrated utilities master plan and ticking off the list of needed improvements. As you might be aware, we have some aging equipment and infrastructure that is in dire need of replacement, and we're currently working towards those goals. Next slide, please. One of the current initiatives that's a really exciting change for the city is we are going to automated meter infrastructure. This will provide our consumers real-time data for consumption. So you don't have to wait till next month to find out if you've had a water leak, if you have a high usage bill. You will be able to go to a web portal and immediately see your usage. We're going to be doing a campaign with our public affairs and marketing to really push that website and web portal so folks can get that accurate data. In addition to that, other current initiatives that are currently funded through the American Rescue Plan include our ammonia and chlorine conversions, rehabilitations of our Floridan wells, and some PLC improvements that we're doing to our electrical controls. As I've indicated, some of these are 25 years old and really require replacement at this time. We're also hardening our water plant and ensuring that we are prepared for all eventualities, and that automatic generator transfer switch is being installed currently. Next slide, please. Getting into some stormwater projects. Again, we've had a shot in the arm with the ARPA funds. So very excited to tell you that we've completed the design for the Southeast 8th Avenue drainage improvements. We've completed the design for West Deerfield, our Deer Run area, as well as Crystal Lake Drive and Northwest 45th Street. Ancillary to these large projects, we've also completed a number of small improvements throughout the community, and those are noted as well. We in addition to the large projects, are always working to do standard maintenance of our systems. One of the good things about this past year was we had a 100% accuracy score on our community rating. And that CRS score is important because what that is it passes on a discount to our residents through the flood insurance program. Next slide, please. So current initiatives, we are in procurement right now for Southeast 8th Avenue and West Deerfield. And we anticipate going to construction fiscal year 24. In design, we are going to be going into design for the MLK Avenue Stormwater Project. We recently were awarded a state appropriation for that design. Our road and bridge achievements. So we have completed the design for Pioneer Grove streetscape improvements and the FAU Research Park Boulevard road widening. Both of these projects have partial funding through the surtax, the Broward County surtax. Renderings of those are shown on this slide. In addition to that, this year we've completed 18 installations of speed humps for traffic calming in the city. And well underway are our procurements for these projects. So we are procuring FAU Research Park Boulevard and Pioneer Grove very shortly. And we're going to be entering into design for the complete streets portion of Crystal Lake Drive. So when I said we were doing the drainage is the underground improvements. The complete streets project will be a subsequent project that follows, and that'll be for installation of sidewalks, street lighting, and crosswalks. Next slide. So some things for future consideration. Be advised that we still fall under the same requirements as all other buildings in the state of Florida, and we have to do our 40-year building assessments on our city facilities. We do have aging infrastructure, so there could be potential expenditures that we will have to address those needs. We also want to talk about the expansion of our reclaimed water distribution network. So we are doing a project concurrent with the Southwest 10th Street project to build a trunk line that will build a reclaimed water line with the project. And we will need to think about how we're going to get that into our communities so we make this accessible to our communities. Also be mindful that the EPA is increasing regulation, and we will be required to have procedures and policies in place to address all of those EPA mandates. We are talking about some unregulated contaminants that may be regulated here in the very near future. And so we're planning for those eventualities. We're looking at changing our lime softening filtration process to an ion exchange system, which will do a much better job of filtering water for these carcinogens that are potentially found in the water. In addition to this, we're continuing the projects that we've enumerated in our stormwater master plan, as well as in our utilities integrated master plans. And we're looking at ways to be more efficient and optimize our operations. One of those things is to look at potentially revisiting the idea with stormwater collections, rather than do the third-party billing through our water and sewer bills, see if it's more cost-effective to look at an assessment. We are continuing our pavement management program. Very shortly, you're going to see some innovative technology happening on our city streets. We're going to be applying a treatment that is for asphalt preservation. And the intent of that is to try to get a little more life out of our pavement. And finally, I want to make you aware of some costs that we will be incurring this year. The Broward County wastewater debt service is a pass-through, and they took on in FY22 a $200 million bond, and that cost is being passed on to its large users. So we do treat our water through Broward County, and so those costs do get passed on to us as a large consumer. So you're going to see that increase in that utility line item. Next slide, please. So we'll get right into the operating budget. This is a snapshot of the entire budget for each of the various funds in environmental services. Next slide. And delving directly into them. For construction and facilities, we're really looking at a nominal change here. We did eliminate one position. It was a position that was very hard for us to fill, and we filled in the interim with consultant-based services. So that comes out of our operating expenditures. In the capital outlay, you will see a request for elevator updates. We have been notified that we need to bring our elevators to building code, and there's an investment there of $110,000. In addition to that, we are in the process of bidding our hazard mitigation grant project, which will change out all of the windows and doors at City Hall to hurricane windows and doors. And at the conclusion of that project, we want to be able to repaint the building after the windows are completed. Next slide. Getting into administration and engineering. Here again, we're trying to build in efficiencies and optimize our customer experience. So we're trying to go to online engineering permitting, concurrent with what Building and Planning Development Services does today with GovEasy. And we'll have some additional software costs as well as some implementation costs and the administrative fees that are associated with that. Under utilities maintenance, this is for our water distribution and our wastewater collection. Contractual services, we do have some line items that have increased. Our meter reading services have increased significantly, as well as the need for contracted services like pest control and pump rebuilds. In wastewater, I briefly touched on this and future considerations. There's the bond, the debt service bond that's being passed through to the large users. And that is a 19% increase in this budget. Again, this is a pass-through cost for treatment of our wastewater by Broward County. In our water plant, we have developed some efficiencies in our operations and with attrition have eliminated a senior maintenance worker. Additionally, we've had difficulty filling a utility electrician. And so we currently have 2, and due to some vehicle issues and other concerns, we feel that it's just best to keep 2 positions for the plant. The 3rd position was too difficult to bring on. Next slide. And here's our road and bridge fund. The difference with road and bridge from all the other funds that you saw is that our capital outlay here is our capital improvement program for road and bridge. You have a CIP before you, which is a separate document, but the road and bridge fund here actually captures all of those capital improvement program projects. It's the only fund that has the capital improvement in the actual fund. And here you'll see that capital outlay encompasses all of these capital programs that we talked about, the FAU Research Park Boulevard, Safe Routes to School, Southeast 15th Avenue Bridge, and the like. Next slide. And our stormwater budget, the reduction that you see in the capital outlay is in this one, we have moved this to the capital improvement program. So now you'll see all of our stormwater projects in the capital improvement program book. And I believe that's it for me tonight. I promised I would try to be quick, and I think I was, so I will take your questions.
Yes, can we go to slide 62? Okay, you know, the online engineering permitting review implementation kind of concerns me because the minute you do start doing things online, it seems as though it's a convenience, and it seems is that it can present itself as being a necessary component, but it can be somewhat confusing. So I would like to know how customer service friendly that system is going to be, because if it's not done right, what you're going to get is just a ton of complaints of people trying to do something online. I myself, and I'm sure this has happened to others, if you're calling to a particular business entity and they try to send you dial this, select this number or whatever, sometime I've gotten in a loop to get only right back to the beginning, and you never talk to a person, and it's very frustrating. So, can you tell me about that a little bit?
Sure.
And go ahead.
If you had any additional to add, I can.
Not to that one. I got something else.
Okay. So this is really environmental services portion of a larger project, which also involves planning, building, and fire inspections.
Mm.
We've had a lot of our contractors who come in to submit plans ask for this. We're behind, we're really kind of behind a lot of cities on this. Right now, they're in implementing this is being asked for.
Mhm.
But you make a good point that not everybody is going to be able to submit their drawings via the system electronically. So we're also, as we do this, we're going to have scanners available so that documents can, if you come in with your hard copies, they can be scanned in on site. But in many cases, the plans and specifications that we are receiving in paper format right now are coming in, or excuse me, originating in some sort of electronic format. So this really is an efficiency measure, not only for the contractor, but for the city's review process as well.
Okay, thank you. The other thing, Priscilla, I want to say to you is that the other thing is that whenever I call you about something, you're always quick to call me back and give me the information that I need to relay to people. And that's important to give updates as quickly. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Could you were saying about the permitting or the design phase of the MLK drainage?
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yes, so typically we'll go out and go through our CCNA process, which requires that we evaluate the consultants in our CCNA. We ask for a qualifications package. They submit their qualifications. And then we have an evaluation team that reviews their qualifications and then shortlists who it is that they want to request a proposal from. Once we receive a proposal, we enter into a work authorization, and based on the value of that work authorization, if it's over $30,000, we bring that before the commission, and the commission approves, moving forward with that consultant. That initiates the design phase, and that design phase typically consists of about a 30% conceptual design, 60%, 90%, and 100%. Each of those deliverables takes between 2 to 3 months for delivery, okay, and development. And then once we get to the 90% phase, it goes to permits for permit review. And then there's a significant amount of back and forth with the jurisdictional agencies that have reviews, such as Broward County. Once we've gotten through that hoop and we've secured our licensures and our permits, then we can put it on the streets for bidding for construction. So my rule of thumb is to always in the schedule allocate about 1 year for the design phase, which I include to be the securing the consultant, awarding a consultant, the design itself, and permitting, and hopefully procurement in that time frame too. And that way we'll be ready for construction in the following fiscal year.
So for the MLK area, we're 2 years out. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're 1 year. So this year in fiscal year 24, come October,
Okay.
we will be funded for the design. We'll complete the design in fiscal year 24. And the hopes is that we secure funding for fiscal year 25 and can enter into construction in fiscal year 25.
Okay, thank you.
But bear in mind, we're really hoping to secure grant funding for the construction. So that's the variable there.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say to the city manager, first of all, thank you for all of the staff, and I'd like to thank staff for the presentation that you guys put forward. You did a very, very nice job. Very well done. Now, this is just something for me. I don't know if my colleagues will agree with this, but when I look at this, whether it's financial services, as the presentations came forward, it was there. Financial services, parks and recs, sustainable management. I think that whichever one's coming up, you ought to have the director's name there. If for instance, if we're talking about sustainable management, director, and that person's name there. financial services, that director. Right in the beginning, yesterday, you gave an overview. You know, I mean, we all know you, but I'm just saying, going through that would be nice if, the overview is done by the city manager, David Santucci, city manager, public safety, here's the director, just each one be on that page. That's just an idea.
No, thank you. And we actually have some credits that we're going to roll at the, no. No, but thank you for that feedback. I think it's good to give the credit to the directors
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This portion of our show tonight, we're going to be opening up to the public. Is there anyone from the public that care to comment? Yes, no, absolutely. Just go to the podium, give your name and address for the record.
Hi. Daniel Shanetsky, 34 Keswick B, Deerfield Beach, 33442. Good evening. Good evening, commissioners. Just two things I just wanted to touch on, if that's all right. I know 2 months ago, we recognized a city worker that had a heart stoppage, and he was brought back to life with the AED kits. I know several months ago, unfortunately, we had a shooting near Oviedo McKeithen Park. Unfortunately, the young man passed. Last January, I came before the city commission and I brought up how one of our neighbors, specifically Coral Springs, allocated funds for cabinets in the parks. Now, these cabinets are life-saving equipment, specifically AED kits, the pads that shock you back to life, and the stop the bleed kits. I think that's very, very important that we should put that in the budget, or at least look at it. Now, we can get grants from the American Rescue Plan Act. And I specifically think with the new Johnny Tigner Community Center in Oviedo McKeithen Park, we should look into putting in some of these life-saving equipment cabinets, as well as even put it in Constitution Park. I went to the Sip and Stroll. I loved it. There's a lot of physical equipment there, working out. There's a basketball court. There's a tennis court. So I think it's very important to have these cabinets in that park, as well as in Village of Hillsborough Park. They have a nice path, very active. They have a tennis court. They have a basketball court. So I just advocate that these kits are very, very important and they could save lives. And I remember Commissioner Preston had brought up at our last commission meeting, June 6th, he said that the young NFL player that had the heart stoppage, and I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, on national TV, what brought him back to life was these AED kits. So I think they're very important to put in at least some of the major parks in Deerfield Beach. The second point I want to bring up is I want to put on my Deerfield Beach Cultural Committee hat. I'm fortunate enough to be part of the team on that committee. I want to advocate to continue with the Broward College Deerfield Beach Jazz Festival. I think it was a success. I think basically, and the thing is, we went out to the neighborhoods. We went to each one of the district neighborhoods in the 4 districts. We went to Village of Hillsborough Park. We had about 200 people. We went to, and I apologize, the exact, I think it was the Northeast 23rd. It was like a pocket park. I apologize, Northeast 26th, I'm sorry. But it was a pocket park. I think it was in Commissioner Dropsky's district. And I'm sorry. And we went out to Oviedo McKeithen. Yes, sir, yes. And we went out to the Oviedo McKeithen Park. What I specifically remember was when Commissioner Dropsky was there, people, and especially in the park, in Northeast 26 Pocket Park, came up to him and said, "Thank you so much. I mean, this is the first time that the city has come out to us." So I think it's very important to continue with the Broward College Deerfield Beach Jazz Festival because it inspires the young people. They see these young people, these are students with Broward College, where they're singing and they're playing instruments. It inspires them culturally, number one. And number two, what I got a kick out of, there are a lot of senior citizens at these 3 parks. and they thoroughly enjoyed the music. So I advocate for that, and I hope that could be continued funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Shinesky was referring to the Crystal Heights Park and Waterford Homes.
Good evening. My name is LaWanda Pack. My address is 262 Southwest First Terrace, Deerfield Beach. I got in a little late. However, I had been listening to the workshop for the last couple of days online. And I made a beeline here after hearing that the pre-prom has been cut. Number two, the overall events here in the city of Deerfield in District 2. I would like to just make this comment. I will leave it where it is. Mayor, it's not that the people are not coming out. We have a special events department. And I have called that same special events department, asking questions from December to even within the last few weeks. The overall community input is being neglected throughout the events programming. We have committees that have been formed, and we're missing the mark about those programs that are being held in the city of Deerfield in District 2. There needs to be a different approach to your committee setup, along with the collaboration of your events departments and the community itself. We're totally missing the mark. Yes, there's been some changes this year with Juneteenth. This is the third year. However, there needs to be a collaboration and not a rejection of community input.
You didn't start the clock yet, did you? Dan Hurst, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. Regarding my handout, in order to have a fair discussion on the budget and millage rate for fiscal 2024, we must first realize the following. The operating millage in Deerfield Beach has remained the same for the last 3 fiscal years, but the rollback rate, which is per section 200.065 of the Florida statutes, shows a property tax increase for the last 3 years, with the last year's increase being almost 10%. With that being said, it was very discouraging last night to hear Mr. Santucci say he wanted to keep the operating millage the same again next year. I'm not here tonight to throw stones at the commissioners, but I think there are some very legitimate questions that you should be asking Mr. Santucci when preparing a 2024 budget. With the preliminary June 1st numbers from the property appraiser's office, Deerfield Beach will have another 10% plus increase in property valuations, which will equate to roughly a $6 million increase in property tax revenue for the city. If none of that money can be given back to the taxpayers, then please ask Mr. Santucci, how much more of an increase over $6 million do we need before we can see a decrease in the operating millage rate? If our reserves are the highest in many years, our debt extremely low, our overall financial health very strong, according to what Ms. Tinsley said last night,
then please ask Mr. Santucci how much higher our reserves have to be and how much stronger does our financial position have to be before we can see a decrease in the operating millage. If we actually did receive $23 million from the federal government over the last 3 years, can we please ask Mr. Santucci if any of that money can possibly go towards reducing our operating millage rate? If the city has finally properly funded their investment in our biggest asset, our Deerfield Beach employees, through the recently completed pay and class study, can we ask Mr. Santucci now that the employees are being compensated more fairly, is there any money left over to decrease the operating millage rate? If the city is now saving $850,000 a year by charging the residents and visitors for using their credit cards to pay for various services, can any of that savings go towards reducing our operating millage rate? I think I've asked enough questions, but finally, I would like to quote Mayor Gans, who said something wonderful back in August of 2022 during a budget meeting. Mayor Gans asked why the fire assessment fee was being raised once again by 26%, even though the general reserve was at a high level not seen in years. He went on to say some of the reserve money needs to start going back to the taxpayers. I have that a minute. He went on to say some of the reserve money needs to start going back to the taxpayers. I could not agree more with you, Mr. Mayor. With the outlook for Florida's overall economy.
We'll give you 2 more minutes then, Mr. Hurd.
With the outlook for Florida's overall economy and real estate market remaining strong, if Mr. Santucci cannot find a way to lower the operating millage rate by at least 5% for this upcoming fiscal year, when will he ever be able to lower the operating millage rate, which incidentally was one of the goals the commissioners laid out for him at his last performance review? On a totally different topic, I think the hiring of Rodney Brimlow is the most significant city hire in the last 10 years. Not only is Mr. Brimlow highly educated in a number of areas, but he brings a level of sophistication and knowledge in dealing with BSO that the city has never had before. I look forward to all the ways that I know Mr. Brimlow will improve public safety while at the same time knowing where to look in the BSO's billing of the city to ensure the Deerfield Beach taxpayers are receiving all that we have contracted for with BSO. Also, Mr. Brimlow is uniquely qualified to analyze whether we should remain with BSO.
I think we've given you more, and I went a little bit
That's
further
credit.
because I interrupted you, so,
But it's
yeah.
only compliments for a city employee.
I know it's a rare thing, but yeah, from you, but that's okay. We'll stick with it. Thank you, Mr. Hers. Appreciate it. So any other people online? Go ahead. Former representative?
Thank you, Mayor. Gwen Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way, Deerfield Beach. I would just like to know from public safety, how many park rangers do we have at this time?
Okay, what else?
I can't understand why we're transferring transportation all around the place. I wish we would find a place for it. I don't know that community services is the ideal place for it, but I just want us to look at that. Also, as it was stated, Youth Automotive Training Center. That was one of the ideal reasons why we were so happy to have that facility there, and hoping that we would get some mechanics out of that facility to come and work for the city. I don't know, maybe we need to be offering a little bit more to those people that are coming out of that program and are able to work for the city. The composting program. Yes, we had a composting programs and we had those items that were given to us, and those people who wanted to compost in their backyards could do so. I think it'll be a good idea. Definitely, I want to see the shred program go back because it was really something that I used almost monthly. And those garbage cans, I'm sorry, I can hardly get the can out that we have now. I don't know who'll be getting those 95 cans, the cans with 95 on them. I wish them well. And also, how much money do we have left to spend in the American Resource Recovery Act planned? I'd like to see in the budget, if you can tell us how much of that money is being used in certain line items to fulfill those line items. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. How many park rangers do we have?
We have a total of 5 positions with 2 vacancies at the moment.
Is there anyone else online? Sure. Ms. Freitag, go ahead.
Good evening, Katie Freitag, 418 Southeast 2nd Street, Deerfield Beach, Florida, 33441. Many of my points have already been brought up by Ms. Reed, Mr. Hers. One of the additional items per Dan Chanetsky's comments, Festival of the Arts was not even listed as an event on Parks and Rec's list of events. And I'm very surprised by that. Is it going away? If so, does that mean the committee is going away? What's the idea behind that? Because it was not listed separately. I do agree with what Commissioner Drosky said. Each one of these events, almost every single event that the city holds, needs to have an educational element, no matter what it is, be it Boots on the Beach, be it Sip and Stroll. Every single event that we have needs to have some type of educational element to make it worthwhile to the city residents. In addition to Chad's conversation regarding the bins, I'm not sure, he had said they were going to remove all the 35s and give everybody 95s. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, per the meeting last night, we have such a high number of seniors, higher number of seniors in our county than we do in a lot of surrounding counties. And I think the 95-gallon bins are going to be too big. So I don't know. Then he changed and said, no, the other two sizes will still be available. So I was a little confused by that. Regarding the onboard cameras, I like the idea that you'll be able to see when people park in front of Rodney's crew, go out and actually talk to people that are parking in front of other people's homes. The other thing I want to make sure, though, that is when we are doing the onboarding cameras, you can see the drivers and you can see the road. Are we also checking, and I'm sure we probably are already, monitoring speed, location, et cetera, things like that? Regarding the public service and adding an additional staff from BSO for educational, I think that BSO downtown should be handling that already. That should be part of the contract that we pay for, that they help with workshops. They help with the education in the schools. I know they don't do it anymore, but when I was in school, the stop, drop and roll type of thing, different things like that. I think they should be handling it. They did come out to the women's club and teach a CPR class, and they will be coming back out again. There was no cost to us. It's just getting people in the door to come and learn how to save a life, which is very important in this day and age. But in the same time, I don't think we should have to be paying for it. I think BSO should be doing it for free. So thank you very much, and good work, everybody.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, anyone else here? All right, I'm gonna close it to the public then. I think we have some suggestions that are all good food for thought. We're doing these community cafes. So as far as community input, I think it's an awesome way that we're getting that information brought to us. We also, ironically, have a committee set up for a lot of these events that are struggling, in my opinion, and yet they're saying that we're missing the mark. We do more advertising for a couple of these events that we talked about tonight than we do for anything else we do. and yet we're missing the mark. I don't want, I'm tired of staff being scapegoated. I think it needs to end up being somehow the community needs to figure out what they want and communicate it clearly and be consistent. Then maybe we can go ahead and try to figure out a way to make some of these projects, some of these events work a little bit better than the way they are. But I don't understand. Something's missing the mark, but blaming it on staff doesn't make any sense to me because it statistically and looking at what we're putting into it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'd like to learn more about that. Other than that, looking for a motion to adjourn. Oh, go ahead.
I'd just like to say that I don't believe anybody is blaming staff. In fact, I complimented staff because I said that, Mayor, I complimented staff and said that they did a good job. I said that we can perhaps do things better, and that should always be in the forefront, that we can always do a better job at what it is that we do. It doesn't matter who we are. And I think also that when we have these conversations, we have to be very careful that walking out of the door, that we haven't become more divided. Here we have an event that is supposed to be uniting, and we have to make sure it just does that. We can disagree about different things and we can have different opinions, but we have to make sure with the sensitivity and the gravity of what's coming forward, we don't isolate ourselves, that we who are putting it forward are divided and we can't able to communicate the right theme that we would want other people to gravitate from. And so, you know, when we think about our history is very interesting in that, you know, like for instance, I go out to the beach on 4th of July and I watch the fireworks and I'm very happy about that. And I understand the historical background as it relates to independence. Truth of the matter is that that wasn't for everybody. That's just the way it was. That all the words that we said for that flag did not appeal to everybody. It wasn't until 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863 by President Lincoln, but it wasn't until 1865 that I feel that America became America, this great country that was created not by monarchy, not by conquest, but by what we have today. And so sometimes we're going to have issues. I wasn't blaming staff. I was just saying that I was putting the onus on staff to do a better job at communicating ideas. You know, nobody really, you know, I'm glad that they did what they did, but there could have been more interaction with just coming to me and saying, hey, what do you think? Okay, that wasn't done. So I'm just saying that we could have a
Are you
better.
telling me staff didn't come to you and ask you what you wanted done for these events?
I'm telling you
If
that
that's what's happening, I'm shocked.
here's what I'm telling you. There could have been a better job with that. And so don't be shocked. We can all do a better job. And the other side of it is that, again, I don't have a problem having an adult conversation with adult people, but we have to make sure that when we have these conversations, that they actually promote healing, that we do the very best we can to understand a central thought process, and we work from there to try to make things better. But, you know, if we're going to, you know, say names like Juneteenth, and then at the end, we be more divided about it, then why are we having it?
Why are we divided about it? I don't understand this.
Well, the fact is that when you talk about staff being ridiculed and that sort of thing, with this,
Someone from the public did,
and
I wasn't talking about you.
Okay, well, some of the other events that was named was, you know, about the spending was MLK, that sort of thing. So we understand the gravity and the sensitivities related to these things. All I'm saying is that we can talk about these things. I just don't think in the past it was done really well. It could be done better. That's all I was saying.
We have a committee. This is where I'm stuck. Because we have a committee, a special committee. It's the only committee we have for these specific events, to get community input. They seem to have no problem giving staff direction on what to do, but you're saying they're missing the mark. Okay, so hold on though. You want special consideration for all these things. The numbers don't lie. This, we can be sensitive. I'm very sensitive to it. I'm completely supportive of Juneteenth. It's ridiculous to think I'm not. I absolutely believe in Juneteenth, and we should be celebrated. But building an event as big as it is, when we don't have the crowd there yet, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. It's nothing wrong with scaling it back a little bit until we have the crowd there and figure out a way to build it from there. But to hear someone say, well, we're not getting into community input. We have a committee set up for this. You're out in the community. You've got a ton of ways for that information to be put forward, a lot more than any of these other events we have. We do more advertising to two events there that are failing than anything else we do in this city. That should tell you something. That's just facts. I'm not interested in rhetoric right now. I'm not interested in dancing around the subject matter. We're losing money on two events that aren't working. Blaming staff isn't going to work, is not the answer, because we do more advertising than anything else. We have a special committee made up of the community that's there for these events. They tell staff what they want, and staff pretty much trips over themselves, more so than they should, in my opinion, to make sure these things work, and it doesn't happen. So where's the problem? Okay, I don't get it. I don't know. I don't have an answer for it, man. I hope you do, Commissioner, because honestly, it bothers me to hear you say that staff hasn't done a good job coming to you to ask what you wanted, because that shocks me.
Okay. Well, let me just tell you, I talked to staff, but I'm saying that there could have been better communication. Here's what I'm saying. Maybe that's the idea, is that there needs to be better communication, and that communication maybe needs to be with staff and the committee that's there. All I'm saying is that if we're not seeing the people, there's a reason we're not seeing the people. And that means that we all have to be challenged enough to go and say, what is that reason? What is it?
Well,
Okay,
I'm baffled, so
okay.
maybe you can help me with that, because
You
I'm
know,
baffled.
Okay, well, as much as you want to talk with it and about it, I'm willing to do
Absolutely.
that, okay?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, let me just say that with that in mind, being that we've talked about it, this coming Saturday, we're gonna have the Juneteenth,
Yeah.
the Juneteenth celebration. And I hope everybody understands, these kinds of things require a special effort on everybody's part to say, here's what the city of Deerfield Beach is doing. And I can tell you that sometimes there can be a greater amount of enthusiasm with some events more than it is others. And unconsciously, maybe I don't know that I'm doing that. All I said was this, which cannot be changed. We all can do a better job about anything when we especially recognize that it's not going the way that it should go. We should ask why, and how do we work collectively to be able to fix it. I think that's fair, man.
I think so too, but blaming staff is not the way.
Did
to
I
go
blame
about it.
them?
I didn't say you did.
Okay, well,
It's a
keep saying
general
that.
statement. Is that okay? Because someone from the public did, and I don't agree with it. So I'm defending our staff.
Okay, and that's
which
good.
should happen.
Okay, that's not
Because the facts don't equal up to a criticism of staff that we're not doing enough. Okay? The advertisement is more than anything else we're doing. Those are facts. I'm arguing facts, not rhetoric. Okay? So that's all I'm coming from. And I'm not saying you said that, others did, and I don't agree with it. That's all.
I want to chime in. We don't know why the community is not showing up to specific events. How does the community want us to celebrate those events? What do we need to do as a city to celebrate those events the way the community wants? I thought that's what our committees are for, was to get input from the community and then have staff and the city act on that. So how do the residents that participate or should participate in those events, how do they want us to celebrate?
You asked
What
me?
did, yeah,
Well, let me just say this, is that we have some incredibly bright people as part of city staff, and it is right for the mayor and all of us
she
as a
said
support.
community.
Okay,
The city doesn't know how
Let-
the
let- let-
community
let-
wants
o-
to
okay.
celebrate. So I want to know how the community wants us to celebrate.
well, here's the thing, Commissioner. I'm glad you asked the question. The first thing that has to be done is accepting a challenge when you yourself, when we collectively as a group see that it's not the response that we want to see. When we're not seeing that response, first thing is why? Why not? And so the thing is that we have to delve into not just the numbers, because the numbers can tell only one part of a story. Whenever there is a story to be told, it's multi-layered. And so communication is one part. Maybe there's other interaction of how that information is disseminated, how it is communicated, the compassion, the enthusiasm in which it's done. So there is work, and all I said, which I think is the greatest compromise, is understand rather than pointing fingers at, and which I wouldn't do. I said it's a good thing for all of us to be challenged to work together. Maybe this, if we had a bigger a platform of national people to be involved. I even heard tonight, which I didn't like right away, but said about moving it. Maybe it should be moved. Okay, but I can tell you right now, we had people from a national platform come to Deerfield Beach. I tell you what, and I'm not going to suggest that I could take it away from staff, but I could definitely give them some ideas. Because if you want to see those streets filled, I can do that. But here's the other side.
I want to know how the community wants us to celebrate these events.
They want you to.
They want us to bring in Dr. Martin Luther King's heirs. I mean, that's the only way you're going to get people here?
I said, I did
not
not,
feasible.
I said, well, it is feasible, and it depends on your commitment to
You
whatever.
don't
it
bring
is.
Uncle Sam at the beach, you just have fireworks.
Yeah, that's because that's an event that's already stable, it's already there, and like I said.
Martin Luther King Jr. Event is stable. It's been there for years.
And but you just asked the question, Commissioner, how do we get people out?
No, I asked how the community
and-
wants us to celebrate these events.
And what I'm saying is this, there maybe need to be another kind of a commitment, a greater commitment on behalf of our community, of the commission or the city, to be able to do that.
Don't we have a committee that's supposed to be the liaison between the residents and the city? That committee is supposed to find out how the community wants to celebrate it and then relay that to the city.
They do that, but that doesn't mean that because they do that, you're gonna get the number. Now, you're asking why the numbers are there because we got this committee. That committee doesn't ensure that there's gonna be a number. That's
So we have a resident saying that the city is not celebrating it the way we want, and that's why we're not coming out.
Who said that?
The resident right there. Okay.
Because she didn't, that's not.
Excuse me.
You know, listen. That's not what she said.
Okay.
That's not.
I understood.
Yeah, but
What did she say?
yeah, the point is this. Here's the point, Commissioner. In the end, we have to do a good job of everybody working together. City staff, committees, the community, to make sure that we can ensure. And when we don't see something that we need to see, we just simply commit ourselves to do a better job. That's all I'm saying. So if you're telling me right now that we're doing the best job that we can, then there's no room for hope. Is that what you're telling me?
If we were, then there wouldn't be
The
500
fact
people
is
show up.
that we need to work together more. And nobody can sit here and tell me, well, the most optimum is being done, that we've achieved that level of
What I asked
idealism,
is
because that doesn't exist.
How does the community want us to celebrate these events? That's
The
what
co-
I asked.
And the community wants us to celebrate it by understanding all the things that we need to do collectively, so that we can put that in form of an idea, so that we will start to see the things that we see.
Well, here's what I'll say. You're the commissioner of that district, figure it out. We're all behind you. But I look at you as the leader there to tell me how it should be celebrated. So tell me how it is. That's what you're tasked with, in my opinion, to let us know. Because I can get behind you, no problem. But I have no idea. Clearly, I'm missing something. And I am baffled. So if you have an idea of what it is and staff's not talking to you, that's a big problem. But if you have
I don't
it,
want you to say that, Mayor. Mayor, don't say
it-
that.
you're the one that said it. I'm just
Yeah,
repeating
yeah,
it.
but you're emphasizing, it. I'm not gonna let you do that. Because what I said is
And
that.
Ben, whatever it is, look, we're all with you.
Listen, just take a.
We're
second.
all with you.
Take it easy.
You take it
Take
easy.
it easy. All I'm saying is that there could have been better communication between staff and myself. They talked to me.
Then we can fix
I can
that.
talk to David anytime I want. I call him, and it doesn't mean that, and I get to tell you, guess what? Maybe that I should have gotten more just involved and say, let's do it this way, this way, this way. But I trust staff to be able to do things. the thing is that we could have all done a better job. That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
That's all I'm saying. I
well,
think
we're behind you to do a better job. I'm just baffled on what direction and how to do that. So I don't know what the deficiencies are or what the issues are, but the numbers don't lie. So I'm with you, whatever you can figure it out, but I do look to you to give us some guidance.
And I did tonight, like, no, one of the things is you don't want to do things like cutting the pre-prom and some things that will further. I think that this commission made a
But
great,
pre-prom
great.
is different than those
I'm
events.
just saying, things that can actually bring our community together, we need to be able to do that. And I think that when we're talking about MLK, when we're talking about Juneteenth, we have to all put our heads together, be able to come up with a strategy to say that, listen, we know that we're deficient in the numbers. Let's see how we do that, because Miami is successful in doing it. Fort Lauderdale is successful in doing those kinds of things. We can do a better job. That's all I'm saying. And I will embrace that task.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. Looking for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.